with the approval of the agenda as amended. So we have a number of items that were added on yesterday and today. Mr. Clerk, you suggested that I ask someone to make a motion for 2/3 to waive the procedure and allow these items on there. So moved by Councillor Gardner, seconded by Mayor Daw. Questions? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Declarations of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Seeing none. We're going to move on to the light part of our agenda. It's community presentations. And so tonight we have Nicole Campsall, Youth and Community Development Coordinator, and Julie Stevenson, Youth Programmer Community Services, regarding the John West Memorial Leaders of Tomorrow Scholarship Award. I didn't have your name on here. Hi.
Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Campsall. I am the Youth and Community Development Coordinator, and with me is Julie Stevenson, the Youth Programmer with the Town of Aurora. The John West Memorial Leaders of Tomorrow Scholarship Award honors the achievements of senior students who are residents of the Town of Aurora and are moving on to post-secondary education. Each year, up to 2 scholarships are presented to students who are entering their first year as full-time students at college, university, or the equivalent. We are honored to be here this evening to present the 2018 winners with their awards. This year's first winner is Josie Kearney. Josie recently graduated from Dr. D.W. Williams and is attending McMaster University in the fall in the Health Sciences program. Josie was an executive member of her school's athletic council, student lead on her school's Terry Fox team, leader of the Williams Habitat for Humanity project, and captain of both her school's basketball and soccer teams. Josie is perhaps most well known by her peers and community for her dedication to helping others. Josie founded an initiative called Change for Change. This campaign, which celebrated its second year in 2017, encouraged her classmates to raise money to provide toys for families over the holidays. Josie has also served as her school's head peer mentor, leading a team of other students to create positive changes in their school community. She has demonstrated exemplary dedication to our community through volunteering her time and achieving high personal excellence throughout her high school career.
This year's second winner is Robert Lee. Robert recently graduated from Dr. G.W. Williams and is attending Durham College in the fall in the law enforcement program. Robert was secretary to his school's student council and treasurer to his school's art council. Robert was also a member of Youth Alive, which is a student club that fundraises for various organizations, and he has been a dedicated Best Buddy to students with exceptionalities for over 2 years. Best Buddies matches students with their peers who have intellectual or developmental disabilities to foster one-to-one friendships and develop leadership opportunities. Robert is a dedicated leader with a personal passion for initiatives involving safety and the care of others. He has volunteered for various organizations and consistently seeks out opportunities to help educate others on personal and community safety. In his role as a volunteer with the Community Safety Village, Robert has assisted in teaching students from all over York Region about fire, internet, and traffic safety. He worked hard to give back to his community, earning almost 500 hours of community service, well above the amount required by his high school. Robert's contributions and hard work has had lasting impacts on his peers, school, and the wider community. Josie and Robert, we are honored to present both of you with the 2018 John West Memorial Leaders of Tomorrow Scholarship Award. Congratulations. At this time, we would like to invite both recipients to the front to accept their awards from Mayor Daw and the Director of Community Services, Robin McDougall.
Wasn't Josie a citizen of the year? Isn't she? Yeah. She's had a good year. Yeah, no kidding. All right. I'm not vacating.
Josie continues to wake up.
Thank you very much, and congratulations. This is most helpful, thank you. All right, we have delegations, 2 delegations. Our first one is Dr. Moore from the Canadian Disc Institute and Moore Chiropractic Group. And this is regarding R2. Dr. Moore, I know I stated your name, but if you don't mind stating your name and address, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Brian Moore from 15,000 Yonge Street. To begin, I'd like to thank everyone who's been involved in the review of the sign bylaw this spring, including council members, staff, and the Aurora Chamber. This week's committee report includes a staff report recommending amendments for enactment to the sign bylaw, including the introduction of a 1-year permit for portable signs with a permit fee of $100 for each sign, identifiable by the town, with a sticker to be located on the sign. To only permit the sign on private lands, with the exception being the downtown core, subject to liability insurance and indemnification letters. The staff report is recommending a height of 1.0 meters and a maximum sign area of 0.6 square meters, and required setbacks to driveways, curbs, and buildings. The report is also recommending the maintenance of a barrier-free path of travel if placed on the town sidewalks. Also suggested is a must be weighted or anchored in place and must be removed at the end of the business day. And that these signs should be removed during snow removal and winter maintenance operations. Staff reviewed 7 other towns' bylaws in the process of the report. However, Aurora demonstrates a distinctly different characteristic from a number of these towns, with Aurora being unique with its downtown heritage, its promenade core, numerous R5 professional converted homes, light industrial, retail, and commercial areas. Some of the towns, well, not all of the towns have all of those features. It would therefore seem appropriate to address different applications to individual areas. On the screen, if we can flip to the first picture here, you will note a raised portable sign. This picture was taken in Toronto's Yorkville district. It seems a very attractive option to enhance the beautification of signage in the promenade area. However, under the wording of the proposed amendments, it would not be allowed. I think we can see one more on the next slide there. Additionally, you will see on the screen, if we move to one more, you will see something called curb signs located on Yonge Street, north of Mark Street. Curb signs are the only form of signage in these particular storefronts. As well, you will note the use of curb signs at most of our major gas stations in town. And if we flip through, you should see that. These larger signs have been used consistently with no perceived detriment to the town. However, these types of portable signs have not been addressed by the staff report to date and remain subject to being considered illegal. Our previous temporary sign bylaw, number 4897-07P, section 0.7 subsection B, refers to the size of an A-frame sign as 1 meter squared, and it would be business friendly to maintain this size as opposed to reducing the size to 0.6 meters, almost half. This would assist business greatly in both cost reduction, so as not to force business to purchase new A-frame signs, and also to ensure effective visibility and legibility of the sign. As a final point, there's been a distinction made between public and private property with regard to this form of signage. There appears no practical reason to require a non-illuminated, portable, weighted sign located on private property to be removed at the close of business, nor between the hours of 11 p.m. and 7 a.m., especially with a fee being applied and business now needing to ensure that signage achieves optimum benefit for business. This is especially true as Aurora has a large volume of commuter residents and travelers, as they would only see the signage in the early morning and late evenings. With this said, I'd like to suggest Council consider minor amendments to the provisions in the staff report to include a maximum height of 2.0 meters, maximum sign area of 1.0 square meters, while leaving the required setbacks for driveways, curbs, and building as they have been proposed. Must be weighted or anchored in place and must be removed at the end of the day of business if located on public property, and to include curb signs located on properties with a frontage greater than 30 meters and no larger than 1.5 meters square and 1.5 meters in height. A similar portable sign permit could be applied. So in closing, I'd like to draw Council's attention to the issue of development A-frame signs as mentioned in my June 5th, 2018 report, which has not been addressed in staff report, but I look forward to your thoughts in this regard. Your consideration in all aspects is greatly appreciated, and I thank you so much for the time tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Good time. Could I have a motion to receive? Councillor Tom? Councillor Gardner? Comments, questions to the delegate on the presentation? Seeing none, Dr. Moore, you made a number of points about different signs, different areas, different zones, and they're not covered in the report. You also made reference, and that's sort of one question I'm going to ask. This was in the information you had given to council, and we directed it to be received to staff for their report. You made a comment that some of those items were not covered in this report. Did you have an opportunity to talk to staff about this?
I did, yes.
Okay. All right. And you did mention that 1 meter squared was what the A-frames were, and it's now been reduced? Okay, thank you. Those are good, succinct answers. Thank you. Seeing no other questions, comments, I will call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. Next, we have Sandra Sangster, representing Regency Acres Ratepayers Association, the Aurora Heights Ratepayers Association, and the Town Park Area Residents Ratepayers Association. That's three. Oh, I see they're joining you here. Okay, very good.
Before I begin, I would just like to request a little bit of additional time to allow the other two to make their remarks, if that's acceptable.
I have no issue. So I guess what we do in this case is when we get to that time limit, we'll waive procedure, and then you can carry on.
Thank you very much. Sandra Sangster, Regency Acres, 46 Holman Crescent. In the letter to the editor that will soon appear in the Auroran and that has been emailed to the Mayor and Council, the Regency Acres Ratepayers Association expresses its deep concern about the inaction of Council to revise the bylaws that are essential to protect stable neighborhoods. Aurora's provincially approved official plan emphasizes the importance of protecting these neighborhoods by ensuring that redevelopment is compatible in building, scale, and design and respects the existing physical character of our stable communities. The Citizens Guide to Land Use Planning on the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing website clearly states, once an official plan is in effect, it guides all of the municipality's planning decisions. It means that the local council must follow the plan. All bylaws, including zoning and related bylaws, must conform with the official plan. Official plans provide the vision for a community's future. Bylaws provide the regulations that ensure that this vision is achieved. What is Regency Acres' current reality? There is a massive disconnect between the vision and policies for stable neighborhoods in the official plan and the rapid redevelopment that is now underway. New builds are dwarfing neighboring homes, incompatible in design, and drastically reducing the mix of affordability in the area. This redevelopment is allowed because town bylaws are out of sync with the vision for protecting stable neighborhoods that is clearly stated in the official plan. We strongly advise the Mayor, Council, and Planning Department to look to the City of Oakville for an excellent model of how to implement an official plan for redevelopment in stable residential communities. This plan has been supported through concurrent change in the regulatory framework, i.e. the bylaws, as well as the creation of a comprehensive and clear urban design document to provide guidelines for redevelopment. Based on the staff report presented at our June 27th public meeting and tonight's report, it is now clear that the concerns of the majority of ratepayers in affected neighborhoods have not been heard. Site plan alone, as is being proposed tonight, by itself is not a solution. It delegates total authority to staff and leaves them making decisions within existing bylaws, at least at this point, without oversight. It will continue to permit incompatible development in stable neighborhoods that conflicts with our official plan. Aurora's political leaders seem intent on allowing redevelopment that favors developers and really does nothing to protect our stable neighborhoods. We are very concerned that our official plan is becoming irrelevant. I'll turn it over to our next speaker.
Anna Cropeland, 54 Harrison. I'm from the Town Park Area Residents Ratepayers Association, and I'm here to formally and for the record request that council direct town staff to revise the zoning bylaws with regards to the stable neighborhood study area to be in compliance with the official plan as mandated by the province. To be clear, pursuant to the Ontario Planning Act, RSO 1990 Section 26(9), updating official plan states, no later than 3 years after a revision under subsection 1 or 8 comes into effect, the council of the municipality shall amend all zoning bylaws that are in effect in the municipality to ensure that they conform with the official plan. The town of Aurora has revived and adopted the official plan twice in the last 7 years, but the zoning bylaws pertaining to stable neighborhoods has not been touched in 50 years. They were also not updated during the town's comprehensive zoning bylaw review last year in June. In addition, I would like to request that you identify those who have commented about stable neighborhoods via email, as those who present in person are required to provide their names and addresses. Thank you.
Allison Halls, 29 Bigman Drive, part of the, or representing the Aurora Heights Ratepayers Association. For the record, I'd just like to say, first of all, I'm quite dismayed and in some sense angry that someone would propose that the Aurora Heights neighborhood be removed from the stable neighborhoods designation when it's been there since the beginning of this process. Furthermore, what we're asking and what we have been asking through our attendance and our comments at each of the meetings is that we also want the zoning bylaws to align with the official plan. I think we've been consistent in that. We are a newer ratepayers association, and if that's working against us, I'm not sure why. But I feel that, yeah, go ahead.
I'm just going to ask that we extend time. Could I have someone move? Councillor Gardner, Councillor Marakis, all in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you.
Thank you. We are also asking, as I said, for the zoning bylaws to align with the official plan as mandated by the province. If there's more information that the Aurora Ratepayers Association needs to provide, or that we should have been aware that we needed to provide, other than our comments at every meeting, we'd be more than happy to cooperate and participate enthusiastically. We're not aware that we are supposed to schedule special meetings or provide anything more than what we've been doing in the public meetings, but we will happily do so. Furthermore, I'd like to say that we also fully support what the other two ratepayers associations have said. We are working together, all three of us now, and we feel that that might help to communicate to council that we are serious about this. We're not going away. We're not just squeaky wheels. We value the neighborhoods that we live in, and we want them to be protected, and we want the official plan to stand and the bylaws for zoning to adhere to that. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Don't go away because we may have questions. Could I have a motion to receive? Councillor Thompson, seconded Councillor Marakis. Are there any questions to the delegates? I'm looking, I have one. Mayor Dahl, go ahead, please.
Thank you, and I apologize, I didn't catch your name, the last speaker. Yeah, if you could come up to the microphone.
Sorry. Allison Halls.
Thank you, I apologize. You said that someone had suggested that the Aurora Heights area be taken out?
It's in this document for the agenda for tonight's meeting. It says PDS 18089 on page 2 of 8.
So it's a staff recommendation?
Yeah, it says neighborhood is not proposed to be included in the site
Okay, I thought
plan.
you might have been referring to something else.
No.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any, Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to make a comment. I forget who said it. One of the three delegates said it. I think it was the lady who spoke first. I just have to push back on something. So I think everyone can agree that everyone here on council has the best interests of the town as a whole, the neighborhoods we live in, as really our top reason for running for council, and it's always our top priority. And I just have to push back on the idea that anyone who's opposed to the zoning changes that were proposed at the last planning meeting are somehow putting developers' interests ahead of the community's interests. I totally disagree with that. I think it's really disingenuous, at least from my perspective, because I have a sincere difference of opinion, and I don't come to that difference of opinion with any other perspective other than what I think is best for the community. So it's a comment. I really don't appreciate having that type of sentiment put into my perspective when it's not there. So again, I act always with the residents' interest in mind, but I have a sincerely held difference of opinion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor, we normally ask a question, but I will allow the delegate to respond.
With respect to the councillor, what we're really asking for is a greater degree of congruency between the vision of the official plan, which talks at length, and I have read through it in detail, about compatibility in building scale and design and respecting the existing physical character of these stable communities. And our existing bylaws, unfortunately, if they allow 10-meter height to the midpoint of a roof and 35% lot coverage, and at the June report from staff, it was proposed that that be increased for a bungalow to 40%, that there is an incongruity that still needs to be addressed between that vision for the official plan vision for protecting these stable areas and the reality that is happening. And I again would like to reference, and I'll be happy to email it to people, the Oakville planning document, which provides very specific examples of how you can allow much bigger houses, much taller houses, but how you can mitigate the visual impact of those things. And so what those of us in these stable neighborhoods are basically respectfully requesting is some consideration that will ensure a congruity that allows, some aspects of the character of our neighborhood to be preserved and protected through zoning bylaw change.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, if I may continue?
Go ahead.
I don't disagree with that. I think we have to look at this issue. I was opposed to the staff recommendations. I think this issue needs more time. And I don't disagree that your opinions and beliefs are sincerely come to and sincerely held. But I just disagreed with your comment that anyone who's opposed to the specific changes are somehow working for developers or put the developers' interests ahead. I have a sincerely held belief. So do you. I think we can respectfully discuss those beliefs and debate those beliefs. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I never heard that, but we'll close this part. Are there any other questions? I just wanted to ask Sandra if you wouldn't mind sending that Oakville plan, because whatever seems to work would be probably very valuable. So if you don't mind sending that to me, and the clerk, and anyone else that wants it may ask the clerk for it. But I'd like to see it. Thank you. All right, I'm going to call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. All right, those are our delegations for this evening. We'll go to the consent agenda. We have 3 items, Mr. Clerk, or did we add any on? Just the 3? Would anyone like to poll or make a comment before we vote on the consent agenda? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. I just had a question about C2 that perhaps I could pose to Ms. McDougall and she could get back to me.
Go ahead, please.
If nobody else has any, is it fine to proceed then? So, Ms. McDougall, through you, on page 2 of the report, it talks about some of the budget variances, and one of them is fitness membership fees. It seems to imply that fitness membership fees were down $116,500, and my apologies for not sending this to you earlier today, but I just want to know if that's just, it seems like it's just simply associated with Club Aurora, but I don't think so, because that would be too large of an amount. So if I could just get some more details between now and next week about what that implies, I'd appreciate it.
Ms. McDougall?
Certainly, I'll share that with you.
Thank you. Councillor Tom?
I have a question on C1.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I suppose this would be for the clerk. I believe the town has put on its website 2 guides, one for the internet voting and one for the regular voting, we'll call it, the voting on election day. There's two guides. Anyhow, I just want to know, is there a procedure for internet voting for scrutineers? And if it's not something you can answer this week, it's fine to maybe as an intent or attachment as a memo for next week. But if there is a process for scrutineers or there isn't one, I'd just like to know why or why not. And if there is, what that process would look like.
Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, the two guides are two policies and procedure documents regarding the use of vote tabulators and the use of internet voting.
Right.
We are currently in the process of preparing documents regarding scrutineers, so I'd be hesitant to say anything right now. We're still in the stages of it, but I could definitely provide more next week.
Counselor?
That would be great. I mean, if it's not next week, I think we have, a couple more meetings left. So anytime before the election, I'd just like to know, so the public knows what the process for scrutineers, both for voting day and for internet voting.
Seeing no other comments or questions, I'll call a vote. Oh, do we have a motion? We do have a motion, thank you. I'll call a vote using your tablets?
No.
No? Raise your hands. All in favor? Opposed? Oh, I thought I asked you that. Okay, so we need a mover. That was out of order. We're going to start. Could I have a motion for the consent agenda? Councillor Thompson, seconded Councillor Marakis. Comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you. Advisory Committee meeting minutes. Oh, my favorite. Could I have someone move for discussion? Councillor Marakis, thank you. Councillor Gardner, thank you. Comments, questions on the minutes? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. I have a question on, first of all, the EAC minutes. That's A2. The Environmental Advisory Committee got a delegation on the wildlife park, and it seemed to be quite involved, including next steps. I don't believe that council's had a delegation, so perhaps you could tell us what where we are at with the wildlife park? Or perhaps alternately council could have an update itself?
Mr. Downey, would you care to answer for Councillor Gardner, please?
Through Mr. Chair, I can give you an update or I can provide one in written form, but right now we have presented to Council through the capital budget different phases with regards to the wildlife park. Council has approved phase number 1, which was $1 million. We are proposing phase 2 and 3 in capital budget 19 and 20. The work that is being looked at right now for the wildlife park, and we're just preparing tender documents right now, is setting up the infrastructure for the wildlife park. So dealing with grading, some planting, some of the foundation work in order to then move into future phases, which is going to then take us into trails, signage, the development or the more refined development of some of the pond areas. We have been working diligently with the Conservation Authority as well as our landscape architectural consultant in the development of the plan.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. Follow-up. And because it's called a park, a lot of people think that it's a regular kind of park. With respect to the signage and the plans that are being done now and the connection to the trail, is it going to be clear that it's a park for the wildlife as opposed to a park for people to be walking through?
Through you, Mr. Chair, during my dialogue there, it's one of the things I stated is we're going to need to look at signage and trails. As you know, when the wildlife park was presented, there are times during the year that the public will not be permitted in certain areas of the park. So we want to make sure that we communicate that clearly through our trails and governance of the park. So it is going to be moving forward as a wildlife park. There will be some restrictions placed on the use of that area during certain times of the year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
And if you wouldn't mind, I'd also like to know what this comment means, possibly Councillor Peary or Councillor Marakis. The committee emphasized the need for communication from staff, which allows the committee to provide comment on planning projects. You could also tell me next week, but it's just kind of a strange comment, and Does the committee not feel that they're in the information loop and that they can do their job? You know what? I'll ask it next week. It is bottom of page 2, section 5, bottom of page 2. And it's with the terms of reference, I believe.
Councillor Perry, do you want to, are you okay now?
Thank you. So I appreciate the clarification. Really, it had to do, what this committee wanted to do was take a look at the terms of reference and make recommendations and suggestions for the next term of council to look at some amendments and changes to the terms of reference to utilize the committee in a more proactive fashion. So the committee, I think, knew what the terms of reference were, but moving forward, I think they'd like to play a more active role, and it was their recommendation that they play a more active role in that capacity. If my vice chair wants to add anything additional?
Would the vice chair care?
I appreciate that because the environment is going to be, I mean, it's already a big issue, but it's going to be a bigger issue going forward. So when we're talking about planning projects, I think it would be good if the Environmental Advisory Committee could give us any help, any suggestions that might be able to where our plans might be able to better cope with climate change. Good, thank you. And last one is there's on page 3 a need for an invasive species program, and staff indicated efforts to mitigate and target approaches for public awareness and outreach. Could you translate that? Page 3, section 6.
Councillor Perry?
I think the topic of discussion there really had to be around Phragmites. And other invasive species that some people plant because they think it looks nice. But we were talking about a targeted communication strategy so that people are aware that what they're seeing is not native to our land, and that as things are moving along, not to plant those types of plants in your gardens.
Will we be doing that in the near term?
I mean, I don't think there's an explicit motion in here directing staff to do something, but it is a recommendation of the committee. And it's not the committee's role to make those types of recommendations that, council doesn't necessarily have an impact or decision on. So, no, I think it's something to be brought up, something for staff to consider as we move forward, but it's definitely important work that needs to happen.
To you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Clerk, I mean, could we make a motion on this in the new business section? What would you suggest to move this forward? Because it means nothing if it's just sitting here. Mr. CAO?
Would you like the CAO to answer that?
I'd like someone to answer how we can move it forward.
I'll ask the clerk if you won't mind responding.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This might be most appropriate for notice of motion to give council a bit more time to consider the program and what the ask of staff, or what the direction to staff would be.
Did you say a notice of motion? Oh, you're a bad man. Oh. Okay, I'll do it for September, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Maracus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Downey. Mr. Downey, would it be possible, just going on further from Councillor Gardner's comments in regards to the IVJ Wildlife Park presentation, could we maybe get that presentation sent out to each council member?
To you, Mr. Chair? Yes,
Sorry,
absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think that would be welcomed information for everyone around the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like a bit of clarification on A6, specifically A6-2 subsection A, recommendation that the construction of a multi-purpose space that maximizes the land available on the southwest corner of Stronach Aurora Recreation Complex be approved. And in the report that's attached, it talks about the price tag being, I think, anywhere from 2.2 to 2.7 million. So what happens with this recommendation if it's passed by council? I mean, is this move forward now? I mean, is it move forward for 2019? Is it part of the capital plan? I mean, I'd just like a little bit of information surrounding that recommendation, and again, what if we pass this tonight, what it means.
Mr. CAO, who am I going to ask to answer that? Would you? Thank you.
To you, Mr. Chair, if this is passed, our recommendation would be to move this to budget 2019, as it hasn't been allowed for in the existing capital plan.
Should that be in the motion? Because it's not. It just says it should be approved. So I'm just, will there be a subsequent report that actions this motion, or is this, it's just a little unclear, and it just says approved with no really qualifying language around it. So is it better that a staff report comes forward based on this, or should there be something added to it that suggests it should be added to the 2019 capital? I mean, it just seems like it's hanging out there with no real laser-focused direction.
Mr. Nadarasi?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we will bring a brief report forward suggesting that the recommendation would be to bring it to budget 2019, that council can consider.
So there'll be an additional report?
Separate report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Just on that point, and I was just looking at my notes, but perhaps either Mr. Downey or Ms. McDougall could remind me, but this was before council before. We had a conversation about asking for a feasibility study as well as the cost. But I believe, and please correct me, that it wasn't to send it to budget, but it was to move forward with it once it came back. But perhaps you can fill me in on the backstory again.
Ms. McDougall?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly from the background of my stepping in and the time frame that I stepped in, there was some feasibility information that was to be provided to the PRAC committee for their consideration and input to feedback whether or not an addition of a gymnasium on the SARC facility was a possibility from a physical nature, program requirement, and capital cost requirement, and that was reported back to the committee. From my understanding, the intent was to share that information with the PRAC committee. The PRAC committee would consider and refer or make a consideration at that time. Council then would have to decide to move forward with the project. As far as timing moving forward with the project, there is not a funding source at this point for that fund. It would have to either be determined as a report in year or come to a budget time frame.
Thank you.
Councillor?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look back.
Councillor Gardner?
I had a comment about the Accessibility Advisory Committee, and we do have the hotel on the agenda for tonight. They asked that some beds are accessible for people to use Hoyer lifts, and that means that the bed frame has to be recessed so that the foot of the Hoyer lift can go under there. So is that going to get passed through to the hotel and asked to be a requirement?
Well, I'm on the Accessibility Advisory Committee, and so with the microtel, we recommended that the accessible rooms, I think the number they're providing is 4 on the first floor and 2 on the second, but I don't know the exact numbers. But those beds not be the normal box frame, that they be on legs with the clearance that will allow the foot of the Hoyer lift to go underneath. And we're very pleased that Microtel took, I think, some 10 recommendations from the committee and employed all of them. to basically the satisfaction. I mean, there was one or two they couldn't, but they were observed and commented on. And I think we've gone back and forth 2 or 3 times. So the nature, to answer your question, is yes. So they're on lakes, so it will allow clearance for the Hoyer lift.
Thank you. That was my understanding that the hotel was going to do whatever they could to help with accessibility, and yet it was still on the agenda again. So I just wanted to clarify that that's certainly been looked at by the hotel.
Okay, so I just mentioned the microtel, but the second hotel, and I forget the name of it now, they have a bed that goes through head office that they don't normally employ. So we've asked them to go back and say, here in Canada, this is our recommendation in Aurora. So we're waiting for some sort of response in that case.
Thank you very much.
Councilor Barakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to our CAO. Doug, in regards to the gymnasium, if council does not make a decision as far as if they wanted to move forward or they wanted to approve moving forward with that type of funding, considering we are looking at being a lame duck council, would that not necessarily just automatically push it to the 2019 budget? So I'm just wondering what the usefulness is of that report coming in September. If it would automatically go to the budget, wouldn't it? Because we wouldn't be able to approve something of that size, of that magnitude in September.
Mr. CAO.
Through you, Mr. Chair, well, the intent would be to have council sort of ratify the advice of PRAC and recommend that it go to budget. So that's the reason that it would appear on the budget list as opposed to just a staff decision.
No, fair enough. I'm just saying that if we weren't to approve moving forward today with it, that it would automatically have to go to 2019 budget if we wanted to, because we wouldn't be able to approve it ahead of the 2019 budget come September.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct, although, anything can happen with a motion. So for a good process, yes, I recommend that would be the process, but
okay, I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
If I could ask Mr. CEO, has council been presented any feasibility, costing, location, size, et cetera, programming?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't believe council has, but the committee has seen various configurations.
The attachment, sorry, Mr. Chair, the attachment's on our agenda.
Yeah, I meant in the form of a council report. It hasn't been directly brought by staff to council, just to the committee.
Thank you. Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like, if it's possible, I'd like A6 separated for a separate vote. And if possible, just further separated 1 and 2 from those recommendations.
Mr. Clerk, is that a problem? Nope, thank you. No problem.
Through you, Mr. Chair, would you be okay if we did A1 through A6, 1, and just 2? Yeah. That's okay?
Sure.
Thank you. Councillor Perry?
Thank you. I want to point out with item number 2 that we're discussing right now, Mr. Clerk, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's just making, there's a recommendation that council do something, but there is no action of council that's being, they could recommend that we decide to all agree that the moon is made of cheese, but that doesn't mean that we have to do that. So there is no action that's actually being contemplated. It's just a recommendation to council that down the road this is something that we should be considering. Is that correct?
Mr. Clerk?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, absolutely.
So this is different than other times where a committee has made a motion that says council shall do this. This is just saying we're recommending that in future council does this.
Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, absolutely. I recognize the sort of the confusion involved here. That's we're definitely looking to clean this up before the next term of council, but you are correct in what you've said.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so I think Councillor Marakis pointed out that there's an attachment to the report on this gymnasium on the agenda. And that is found, is that an addition? So that's an add-on that we received on Friday? Monday. Okay. So really, Pardon me? With the minutes. So we have the minutes and the attachment of the report that was given on the feasibility of the gymnasium. And the recommendation is to move forward on it. All right, just so we're clear. I haven't had that opportunity to look at it, so. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. And I don't know, maybe there's a disconnect here, I'm not sure, but just to back up a bit. So the genesis of this came from a Sport Aurora meeting, which Mr. Downey was presenting a number of some information and facts, and actually talked about the immediate need for a gymnasium. And that's where this started from, and when it went to PRAC. And then the conversation became, because the SARC was always intended to have a gymnasium, but at the last minute, it was taken off of the plans. And that's why there are still plans to date that show an existing gymnasium as part of the SARC. And so we moved forward with that premise to address the immediate need and build a gymnasium. And one of the reasons we had a special PRAC meeting in June was in order to get the minutes before this council at this meeting, before we became lame duck. It was never to go to budget. So I'm not sure where that's come from, but that was never the intention, nor was it part of the conversation from the get-go. The conversation was, we need it now, let's move forward, and let's build it. And that's why the costs and the feasibility are before council. Now, I completely understand if council's not willing to move forward with it, but it was never to go to budget, so not sure where that disconnect came from.
So if I could ask a question, perhaps Mr. CEO can answer this. The recommendation is to go ahead with construction without a funding source?
Through Mr. Chair, we can't go ahead with the construction without a funding source. So in order to move it ahead in this term of council, council would have to just basically move a motion to go ahead and do an in-year capital transfer to make it happen. Outside of that, the recommendation, the committee has looked at it, and the recommendation is to move ahead. And so through the normal course of a process, then staff would do a staff report. They would recommend that it go to capital budget, and you would consider that the 2019 capital budget. But as I said earlier, we're at the will of council, whatever council wants to do. If the desire is to move it forward more quickly than that, then it would be just done by motion.
It's just...
Well, if I may just add, I think that's why I was under the impression there was going to be a staff report. And when I didn't see a staff report, I inquired with the clerk and had the PRAC report added to the agenda, because I knew my council colleagues would want to have this information. It would not move forward simply based upon a recommendation of the committee minutes. So there's the disconnect.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further on this? Councillor Thompson? Okay, good. Councillor Gartner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't on the council at the time, but I was in the council chamber. The reason that there was going to be a gymnasium there was because it was going to be part of a youth center. That was going to be the whole focal part of a youth center, and there were going to be a couple of rooms attached to it. And being a youth center, it probably wouldn't require that much parking. So it was intended for a specific use, and that was mostly for the youth. So if we're going to revisit this now, I think we need to look at the parking issue, because the parking there, I mean, among other things, but the parking there is very tight as it is. As is the change room. It's not that large a change room, and from what I understand, it's well used. So I need to be clear, and I'm really not sure. Are we intending to prove this without? Did the committee get a feasibility study?
The attachment was added on yesterday, so I don't know that you've had the opportunity to look at it. I'm just looking at it right now, and I'm looking at, like, I'm just not familiar with it. Anyways, that item is being pulled separate, so perhaps at that time, Mr. Clerk, we can discuss it? Okay.
Okay, so it's going to be pulled separate for a discussion or for a vote?
For both.
Okay.
When we go to vote on it, we allow an opportunity to discuss, if we understand what it is. Well, we are pulling it separately.
I didn't ask for to pull separately, I just wanted to vote on it.
Vote on it separately, okay. And we could discuss prior to the vote. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Any other comments? I'll just make the one on the Accessibility Advisory Committee minutes of June 20th, page 4 or 5, roundtable discussion, Library Square. We noted that in the report, our concerns were not addressed, so we reiterated and had a roundtable. We are very clear on the concern with the new design, specifically with the accessible parking spots and pedestrian drop-offs appear to be further from the entrances. And I would like to ask, through me, I guess, the Accessibility Advisory Committee requested that when the final design does get done, it will come back to the Accessibility Advisory Committee because it was understood that it wasn't finalized at that time. Who would I ask, Mr. CAO?
Sorry, you're asking just if it's coming back to that committee?
Yes.
So my understanding is that council has approved the final design drawings for the Library Square and for that laneway to be moved ahead. So I guess as a final stop, if council so wishes, we could bring it back to that committee to take another look.
So the final approval was 2 handicap spots. That's what the design was at that time. That was approved by council.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe the drawing at the time had 2. There was also talk of adding accessible spots along the laneway, and they hadn't at the time drawn on accessible spots might be available on Yonge Street. So I believe there's some work to do that as well.
So the question is before those final designs are approved by council, that it would be for comment from the Accessibility Advisory Committee. And you are telling, would you answer that? I mean, I think you answered. I don't want to put words in your mouth. We saw 2. You're telling me that there's going to be some added.
To you, Mr. Chair, that was the intent from the discussion and the discussions we've had with the architects. They've considered, as I said, spots along the side. There wouldn't be any change, though, to that those 2 spots in that configuration, because that would require realignment of the plan. So my understanding is that basic plan of the turnaround and the spots that are there, that has been approved by council, but there might be the opportunity to create other spots either on that laneway or and on possibly right on Yonge Street.
Okay, so I just want to be clear, Mr. CAO, that the committee asked that any new plans be brought before committee, and the answer is they have been approved and there won't be anything coming back to committee.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if council wishes for us to bring the final plans prior to tendering back to the committee, then we can do so.
Well, I don't see that. I would maybe like to have that as a motion. Would someone care to put that on? Would this be appropriate to do it? When would that be done? New business. Thank you. All right, Councilor Maracas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So was A6 number 2, was that actually pulled? Or are we just voting? Is it pulled?
Separate vote.
Separate vote.
It's just a separate vote? So we're not pulling it, bringing it to the regular? Okay, I just like to remind everyone, my colleagues around the table, that the original motion that we did pass to ask for the feasibility study was that staff investigate the feasibility and cost for a gymnasium at the Stronach Aurora Recreation Complex within the 2018 budget. That passed at this table. So I just want to remind everyone of that.
All right, so any further comments on the advisory committees? Seeing none, we are going to break them down. We're going to do all, well, Mr. Clerk, maybe you'll explain it.
The motion we have up on the screen right now is that all of the advisory committee minutes, with the exception of A6 sub-item 2, be received and carried by the committees.
Are we raising our hands, Mr. Clerk, or are we going to use the tablets? You're going to use your hands. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Sub-item 2, A6, is now going to be voted on. Councillor? Okay. So this is the part with the gymnasium, just so we're clear, correct? All right. Could I have someone move it and someone second, please? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Maracas. Councillor Perry, I see the hands moving. Is there something there?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The recommendation from the committee is that they're making a recommendation to us. So if we're approving that in the minutes, that's fine. But what's in front of us right now isn't that the committee is making a recommendation to us. It's a portion of that. So this is asking us to move forward right now, and I don't think that's how minutes work. The minutes are really making us a recommendation for us. So I would want to see this as a whole, as opposed to just this.
Councillor Perry, I think I agree with you. I'm going to ask the clerk to clarify. Mr. Clerk, it's a recommendation that we're voting on, correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, I think as the CAO said, we can't move forward without a funding source or even a design. So I don't, the intention isn't to approve the facility this evening, the construction of the facility this evening.
Point of order.
Councillor Tom, your point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My point of order is with respect to the recommendations of the committees. The recommendations that were just passed from, say, the Heritage Committee has specific recommendations that, if passed at council next week, will have specific implications, whether or not they were separated out or not, or amended by council. So to me, and I think it's made pretty clear by some of the members, this is a direction to staff if it gets ratified at council next week. That's my opinion. That's I guess my point of order. So I'd just like the clerk to comment on whether or not that is correct. Because, like I said, I use Heritage as an example that, if we, item A1 sub 4 is that 29 Church Street be removed from the register of properties. If that gets ratified at council next week, that will happen. It's not just a recommendation with no teeth. So I'd like to know that my understanding is correct, or if Councillor Perry's is correct.
Mr. Clerk. Oh, Mr. CAO. Thank you, Mr. Neto-Rossi.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The recommendation of the committee is that the Parks, Recreation, Cultural Service Advisory Committee recommend to council that the construction of the multipurpose space be approved. So that is the recommendation to council. In and of itself, that isn't direction for us to go ahead and build. It lacks funding. So if this is passed with no other comment, we would proceed down a path to bring this to council to get it approved and funded and built. In the absence of any other direction, we will do that in budget 2019. If we get other direction to speed that up, then we will do so.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. All right. Are there any comments? Are we open to comments at this time? Okay, seeing no comments, I'm going to call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? 2, 3, that carries. Bizarre. All right. Back to the agenda. We have done the advisory committee minutes. Consideration of items requiring discussion would go to the regular agenda. Now, I would poll. We had 2 delegations. So one was on the stable neighborhood. That was item 11. I think as a courtesy, we would move that forward, along with the sign bylaw. Number 2. And then we have some here for the Hallmark lands. I know we have a party here. So item 11.
I'll make a motion.
Let's hear it.
I'll move item R11 to after to in front of R1 first.
Okay. Mayor Dahl, you were going to say that. Seconder? Mayor Dahl, you were, okay. So all those in favor of moving R11 forward? Opposed? That carries. So let me just get this. This was an add-on that we received yesterday, Mr. Clerk, is that correct? R11? Okay, thank you very much. Could I have someone move this? And a seconder. I'm looking left. I'm looking right. I'll just wait a moment. Councillor Thompson moves it, seconded. I'll take Mayor Daw. I know Councillor Maracus had his hand up, but he's seconded almost everyone so far, so we'll give someone else a chance. All right, any comments or questions on this item? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think these have been addressed by the delegates. The first one is that under executive summary, establish site plan control over Regency Acres, Town Park neighborhood, and portions of Temperance as identified within the stable neighborhood study. I don't think we, first of all, I don't think we have decided whether or not Temperance should be in.
I'm sorry?
No, I thought we were going to, well, I was planning on walking Temperance to see what the people thought, but I don't think we've made a decision yet about Temperance. But with respect to what the delegate said, and I sincerely agree with her, the February meeting, the May meeting, the June meeting, all of the maps of the areas that we were going to discuss of stable neighborhoods always included Aurora Heights, and there may not have been a lot of comments to begin with. There were certainly comments in May, and there were lots of comments in June. So with respect to the delegate and Aurora Heights, our first, our oldest stable neighborhood in Aurora, I think that should definitely stay under a site plan control initiative. My second concern is I think also was addressed in open forum, stable neighborhoods are R3 designation. R3 designation is detached homes. And there are in the town park area little R7, little pockets of R7, but throughout this study and this process, it's been R3. So I don't think this is the time to include the semi-detached and townhouse dwellings. I'm not sure, but I think they're an R6. I think, Mr. Muno, you told me they're an R6. So we're at the end of part of the end of the process, and it's very late in the day to change what we're looking at. So I would like it to stay R3 stable neighborhood and include those very small pockets of R7 in the town park. Mr. Muno, I mean, perhaps you could give me an explanation, and you always do give excellent explanations, but I think that my points are very valid here.
Mr. Ramuno.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair. So the one reason I included the semi-detached is our current site plan control bylaw is old and outdated, and it speaks to inclusion of zones the way it should be done, and council doesn't have the benefit of the new bylaw that'll be brought forward next week. It identifies the built form, the housing type that should be included or excluded. So the only reason I included the semis at this point was it's the last built form that wouldn't be included within the site plan control bylaw. You're correct, semis aren't within the study area, but there are some zones that include semis on the fringes of the stable neighborhood area, and that's why I included it. It's unlikely that some of those will develop anytime soon because it requires both owners of the two units. So it's an easy one if council wants to direct me to not include semis. We'll make note of that, and when the bylaw comes forward, if it comes forward, it'll speak solely to single detached housing units.
Councillor?
Thank you. I hear what you're saying. I don't think they should be included for two reasons. First of all, the R3 is very specific in the minimum lot size. If we include townhouses and semis, we're talking about maybe a 26-foot frontage, I think you told me. So we're going to much smaller frontages, and that's really not what we're talking about. We're looking at the lots that the developers are targeting for large developments, and there's, as you said, they're certainly not looking at the semis and the townhouses. And, you know, in the future, when all the other land is used up, maybe they will look at the semis and the townhouses. But that is not what we're talking about. That's not what we've been talking about for 3 meetings. So I think we stick to the R3 designation, and we continue to include Aurora Heights. I'm not sure if, do I make that, ask for that to be an amendment, or are we going to go through the report and pick out the things that we want and the things that we don't want?
Well, Councillor, if you want, we could put that you do want to address that, and we will return back. If anyone else is in favor of it, we'll allow you to move it forward. But we won't forget that you want to address that.
Put it on. Well, why don't we just make the amendment now while I remember it?
Fair enough, if your choice. Councillor Humphreys will second. I saw a hand, but I heard over here, so I'll go with
be to go back to what we've been looking at before, which is single detached R3s, and to keep Aurora Heights in the mix of stable neighborhoods. Okay.
Okay, so it's an amendment with like 2 clauses.
Thank you.
Is that fair? Well, we'll vote on it as one, but I'm just sort of in case someone wants to. Okay. Comments, questions on the amendment? Councillor Tom, I see you here.
Thank you. So I just have a question, I guess, for Councillor Gartner, who posed the amendment. So you want only R3, houses zoned R3 single detached to be included for site plan control and not semi-detached residential?
Councillor?
If I
Gardner,
may,
yeah.
well, what I'm asking for is the same parameters that we've been using all along. We've had 3 public meetings now, and we've been using the R3, which is the single detached, and the 3 stable neighborhoods. So I think that we should just continue with that and not change something at this. Thank you.
Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I have a question for staff. So if the idea is to have site plan control, so the idea is to control the site plan of proposed additions, new builds, and so forth. If someone in the Regency Acres area, for example, that buys 2 semi-detached, like 2 conjoined semi-detached buildings, and they want to rip them down and put another 2 semi-detached buildings, they would not have to conform. Under this amendment, they would not have to conform to a site plan agreement, but under the staff recommendation, they would. So I guess I just don't understand, because I mean, the whole idea of the stable neighborhoods is to protect against incompatible development. So if a developer did buy 2 semi-detached dwellings, rip them down and put 2 new ones up, why wouldn't we want them to go through the site plan control process? I guess that's my question.
Councillor Gardner, please.
I've done a lot of work in the area, and it doesn't seem the developers want to spend the money to buy 2 semi-detached, and usually they're on smaller lots. So that's why we've been going with the R3. There doesn't seem to be any concern about developers buying the smaller lots.
Councillor Gardner, if I could ask a question of the director. Mr. Ramuno, if someone were to buy 2 semis attached, could they put up 1 dwelling?
To you, Mr. Chair, no, because those semis are in a R6 zone, which only permits semis. So if they were to purchase both and they wanted to do 1, it would call for a amendment to the zoning bylaw to permit that detached housing form.
So if they asked for an amendment from an R6 to R3, could they then build a single lot?
Through you, yes, but that would require an amendment to the zoning bylaw and a public process.
And then they would be
to the
governed
council.
under the same site control plan.
True.
So it would fall back into that. But if they decided to put 2 semis and make them bigger, there's nothing restricting that at this time.
That's correct, and that's why I've included semis at this point if we're going to amend the site plan control bylaw, but it's up to council.
Councillor Gardner, I just would like you to explain why that's not a good idea.
Well, first of all, the lots of the semis are very small, so there's a lot of scope. There's not a lot of scope to make a larger lot. And second of all, the reason we're here, the reason we've been here for so many times, is because we're trying to protect the neighborhood from monster homes. And the monster homes are the homes that are appearing on the R3 lots. And I think this just muddies the water. It changes the median dimensions for the lots when we're taking overall average for the area, and at some point we may go forward and do more design controls. So it's to me it's a red herring. It's a non-event.
Okay.
It provides no extra protection and just confuses things.
And Councillor, I know you're very involved in this. Is this more or less what the ratepayers are? Is this where is it your own sort of idea? I'm just don't want to leave something out and leave a situation where we're vulnerable.
Mr. Chair, I believed one of the delegates mentioned it.
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No,
I just
no, none of the delegates mentioned it. I can do some more work on it next week.
We're here for single, detached. Okay, I understand that.
I don't know where this came from, and certainly I don't know where removing one of the ratepayer groups came from.
Okay, thank you. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Mayor Dahl.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, could you help me understand why the Aurora Heights area was removed?
Mr. Ramuno?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I mean, that was my suggestion and why it wasn't included in the report at this point, because based on what we've heard, no question, we do have a ratepayers association that's been formed in Aurora Heights, but to start with, I mean, we haven't been noticing or experiencing much redevelopment or new housing form happening up there. So as a start, I'm recommending Town Park area and the Regency Heights. Moving forward, we would need to prepare design guidelines as well. So I did mention that at a future date we could expand that site plan control bylaw to include that area. But again, if council wishes to include that Aurora Heights area, it's easy. It'll just be reflected in the maps that we've circulated previously, and that would form part of our site plan control bylaw to include those 3 study areas. And again, I would also need clarification, because we've included temperance by next week if we do want to include that temperance area as part of the site plan control area.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Dahl, thank you. Councillor Perry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Ramuno, are you contemplating for the design guidelines that each of the areas would be dealt with separately, or same design guidelines across the board?
Mr. Ramuno?
See you, Mr. Chair. I mean, that's a good question. At this point, I'm thinking that, we would probably need probably a separate set of guidelines, perhaps for the Town Park area at a minimum, and, a separate set for the area west of Yonge Street for Regency Heights and Regency Acres and Aurora Heights. But again, we'll need to do a bit more work on that, and we'll have to engage a firm to assist in those preparations, and we would likely consult with at the minimum, the 3 ratepayers associations as well.
Councillor Perry?
So then, am I right to assume that the Regency Acres area and the Aurora Heights areas would likely have different design elements? Because if I'm on those streets, they look very different to me.
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we would likely, at the end of the day, see 3 separate set of architectural design guidelines for the 3 neighborhoods.
And I guess with regards to Aurora Heights, would it delay the process of getting those design guidelines if we move forward with all 3? Because you've noted that the Aurora Heights neighborhood would likely require its own design guidelines. There's currently no development going on in that location right now, whereas the Regency Acres area of town, as well as the town park area, are seeing changes taking place right now. So am I correct to assume that it would take longer to get all 3 of these done than just 2?
Mr. Bermudo?
Through you, Mr. Chair, another good question. I'm not sure exactly how long it'd take us to prepare those, have those guidelines prepared. At this point, though, if council's going to amend the site plan control bylaw, I would proceed on the basis of, and it's delegated to staff, we would have site plan control for the 3 areas without the benefit of architectural design guidelines, but that would be the next phase of the project, is work towards putting together design guidelines for those 3 neighborhoods. That will take some time at this point. It's too early to tell, how long that's going to take. It's a question of whether we're going to engage in additional public consultation, but the start is to expand the site plan control bylaw to include those 3 areas.
Councillor Perry?
Thank you. So I'll just state that I'm against removing semi-detached dwellings as part of this process. Councillor Gartner says that, she doesn't see it as a big problem, but if we're talking about, the redevelopment of a site, I see no reason why you would take that tool out of the toolbox at the start of your day and say, I'm not going to need it, it's not going to be a problem, so I'll leave it at home, where it would take you exactly the same type of effort to include it now. So I'm against that portion of this amendment. And I'm also against including the Aurora Heights neighborhood at this point in time, based on the comments that Mr. Munoz stated. There are currently no major developments happening in this area. I would rather see Mr. Amuno move expediently on the other 2 areas of town as opposed to this. So for me right now, I'll be voting against this in totality.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor Humphreys?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And in terms of the semi-detached dwellings, I wouldn't mind if they were put back in. That's just a sort of a safeguard. I understand where Councillor Gartner's coming from, though, and usually they're looking at the bigger lots and the smaller homes. But from the Aurora Heights perspective, I live in that area, and there is development going on. There's one in particular in the back. I don't want to mention the street, but it's caused a lot of concerns for the neighbors. It's about 1.5 years it's been there. It looks, I don't want to insult anybody, but it's like a sore thumb compared to what the neighborhood looks like. So I'm just afraid when that starts happening, it's going to cause a bit of a trickle effect. And I think it'd be great to include it and just be able to have that opportunity to take a look at what's going to be done there and to know that it still conforms to the neighborhood. So for me, I'd like to absolutely include this and keep it in. I think it's a safeguard for sure. Thanks. So I support the number 2.
Thank you. I don't see any other comments, but just before we vote, I appreciate that the ratepayers came forward. I value their engagement and that all 3 of them are here and supporting one another, so I'm all in favor of including the Aurora Heights. In my mind, if you exclude the other 2, development opportunities will look where the next place, and that'll be on the north side. Although they are different and distinct, they are similar in that they're larger lots and small bungalows, perfect for bigger homes that fit the style. So we're not opposed to people building their dream homes. We just want the conformity, and that has been expressed very clearly. I did respond, and for lack of a better way, the best way is to look at some of the bigger homes, and we've identified some of those addresses, and there are homes that are built, dream homes, but smaller and in the scope and conform, and that's the one. And if it's just the language matches that, that's exactly what we want, and that's why I think it's valuable to look at the language that town of Oakville used. If it's not a town, it's a city, but anyways, we would look for the best practices, and I think we understand now by amending our site plan control plan, we can accomplish that. And I really think it's very valuable engaging our Ratepayers Association just to make sure we've got things and we don't leave a loophole. So I am in favor of moving forward in that fashion. Councillor Gardner, I still think that semis are a development opportunity, and I don't see any reason to exclude it. So I'm going to ask that we separate those two. Unless there's something that comes apparent for next week, I would rather have it in at this time rather than taking it out and again creating opportunities. Just let the stable neighborhoods dictate stability. All right, if anyone else seeing on the amendment, all those in favor? Oh, we'll do them separate. So on the first clause, I'm looking at it, semi-detached dwellings be removed. All those in favor? Opposed? That fails. On the second clause, to include the Aurora Heights. What am I waiting for?
Just the Aurora Heights.
All right, well, it's not coming up on the screen, but are we okay to vote on the Aurora Heights? We all understand? All those in favor? To put the Aurora Heights back in? Opposed? That carries. All right. That item is completed.
No, it's going back.
Oh, that's the amendment. All right. Councillor Tom, I did note that you were on before the amendment. Do we still allow the courtesy of the amender to finish?
Councillor Gardner's on the floor.
Technically, Councillor Gardner, you're still on the floor. Would you brought the amendment up, so you've got 5 seconds.
I have another 5 minutes.
You've got 5 minutes, I'm
Do
sorry.
I really?
Yeah.
Holy smoke. So we've addressed the comments of one of the delegates. There was other points raised, though, and it is, we are at this point in the process where it looks like we're not going to be addressing any zoning bylaw changes this term. But I would like to bring it to everybody's attention that it is in the Planning Act that within 3 years after an official, it's in Sandra's letter, within 3 years after an official plan is formed or updated, the council of the municipality must look at the zoning bylaws and ensure that they are in keeping with the policies in the official plan. So I will say to council, I will take responsibility. I was part of the official plan committee. I missed it. The first thing is, we should have been looking at our bylaws much earlier. Mr. Muno had a lot of work, and it took many years. And some municipalities haven't updated their zoning bylaws yet. But when it comes to the stable neighborhoods, the mature neighborhoods, the existing neighborhoods, many, many municipalities around us have updated their zoning bylaws for protection. And it's a small matter of research if you want to do that. So we've, in my opinion, we've put these residents in a position that they didn't have to be in. We could have helped them by updating the zoning bylaws pertaining to stable neighborhoods, and they wouldn't be in this position that they are now with monster homes. So I apologize to them. I apologize for my oversight, for council's oversight, although we are directed by staff. When we looked at the comprehensive zoning bylaw, and some of you on council have looked at it for years and years, we never looked at the zoning bylaws for stable neighborhoods. And that was indeed an oversight on this council's part. So I can only apologize for myself, and I do that. But it is time. It is time to be in compliance with the Planning Act. They give us 3 years. We've had more than 7. So I'm really not sure why we're at this point, how we got to this point. But I think it's wrong, and I'm saying that for the record.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a comment raised by Councillor Gardner. I think there is definitely a challenge and a major challenge with compatible development in older neighborhoods. I think my issue with what took place at the past public planning meeting and the kind of changes that were proposed was that there was not a lot of, in my opinion, real thought about the future impacts of what those specific changes would have made. And I agree with you, there needs to be something done, but for example, the official plan talks about 9 meter height as a maximum. And obviously our zoning bylaw is not in conformity. Now, I've talked to Mr. Ramuno, and he can confirm that when an official plan and a zoning bylaw aren't in conformity, it's the zoning bylaw that actually trumps the official plan. And he's nodding, but I'd like maybe just a clarification that is the case. If there is a conflict, it's zoning bylaw that prevails.
Mr. Ramuno, could you clarify that for us,
Through
please?
you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. And I'll just add that our official plan, broad-based document, does speak to 9 meters, but it also does permit 3-story structures and townhomes within a stable neighborhood.
Thank you. And so I agree with Councillor Gardner that we need to look at this, but I think it just needs to be done in a much more judicious manner. And I understand that there's time pressure because as we wait, homes are going up. The challenge is that even a 9 meter height restriction on a property with a 35% lot coverage, that's 10,000 square feet, you're still going to get a 7,000 square foot home. Even if it's just not going to be 10 meters high, it's going to be 9 meters high. So it doesn't really address the issue. And I think if we're going to address the issue, we should look at it. I didn't mean to get into this whole discussion again, but Councillor Gardner raised it. I agree that something needs to be done, and I just disagreed with what was proposed at the last public planning meeting. Again, it's a sincerely held belief. I think that we need to look at it in a much more judicious manner than what was proposed. But I do support site plan control, and I have a question for Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, the architectural guidelines aren't mentioned in the report, but are they? Did I miss it? Anyhow, so just explain to me that the architectural guidelines for each neighborhood will be brought forward with the bylaw that's going to be proposed, or is it going to be simultaneous? Could you just expand on that?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So what I'm proposing here through this report, next week at council, we will have the amended site plan control bylaw for council to consider. Once that's enacted, site plan control will be expanded to these 3 areas. I mentioned in the report that preparation of architectural design guidelines is going to take some time, so that won't be ready for next week, but that'll be a future report with those guidelines. And as I mentioned earlier, we'd likely would want to consult with the 3 Ratepayers Association. So we'll have site plan control delegated to staff, and we'll work with applicants as they come in with their permit drawings to ensure that we do the best we can to ensure that there is compatibility in the scale and the architecture. We'll have a say in trying to encourage changes to those plans before they're submitted, formal building permit applications are submitted.
Councillor Tom?
Thank you. So just to clarify then, any site plan applications that come in before the architectural guidelines, it'll be at staff's discretion to make sure that they, to the best of their ability, comply?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct.
And as a follow-up, so perhaps when the site plan architectural guidelines come into effect, or when they get produced, this will be mentioned in there, but the town park area ratepayers, I believe, discuss things like garages setback and so forth. Is that the sort of thing that can be dictated to within the site plan process? So if you wanted to have a garage not at the front of a property but at the rear of a property, is that something that can be addressed with site plan?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes. So that's an element, along with architectural treatments, et cetera, placement of the new building, the garage, yes.
Thank you. So, again, I support site plan control. I support the amendment that's been added in as well. And I think we should use this as a tool to try and help minimize the adverse effects of some of the development. And then I hope that the next term of council, because it will spill over to the next term, will address the zoning, and I believe that they will do so. I can almost guarantee that it'll be an issue, and it'll definitely be an issue in the election, but I really think that it has to be done in a more incremental way, one that looks at the future impacts to property owners, as well as the impacts of monster homes. So again, I'll be supporting what's on the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I might get some flack for this, but from a planning professional's perspective, this question will be to Mr. Ramuno. I've heard some delegates say that our zoning bylaw isn't in conformity with our official plan. I've heard it from councillors around the table, and I don't believe that's the case. But from a planning perspective, and as our chief planner, man in charge, Mr. Ramuno, is our zoning bylaw in conformity with our official plan?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, my opinion is our zoning bylaw is in conformity, as is our official plan, in conformity with our provincial growth plan and our regional plan.
Councillor Perry?
I wanted, from somebody who is a registered planner, I wanted their opinion on the table. And so that's the first thing. The second one is I have no issue with what's in front of me. Like Councillor Tom, I think going through this site plan process allows for a bit of a measured approach at this point in time. So I appreciate that. It doesn't, in my opinion, negatively impact a resident who wants to do something with their home, but it does ensure that what they want to do gets looked at and a decision gets made beforehand. So I think that's important. So I'm in favor of what I see in front of me. And the other comment that I had heard prior is that we have a zoning bylaw that's 50 years old. Again, we looked at it, I believe, in 2016, 2017. It was updated. I think that we need to keep in mind all the good work that our planning department has done over the years. So I have no reservations moving this forward. I would have had a big problem with instituting a zoning bylaw change shortly before an election, which would in all likelihood have gotten appealed, and so it would have caused so many more issues. Like Councillor Tom, I think if we allow for a measured approach after the election, this is one step, and I think further steps will be required.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Humphreys.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I support the motion in front of us. I think it's a great first step. I believe it does lend us a little bit more authority in what's being built, and at least a heads up, an acknowledgement of what the plans are. And once those plans are, site-specific and we approve them in the stable neighborhood areas, I think it'll be great that we'll be able to follow up and watch closely how those buildings are proceeding when we do site inspections. It just gives us that little bit of, again, a little bit more control. But there is some work to be done. I think we need to look at those bylaws. I know that some think they're okay, some think they're not, but they do need to be looked at a little closer, make sure that they do conform to the OP, and, try to really keep these unique areas, the way they are to be. I do believe absolutely in updating the areas, updating the homes, making them more beautiful, whatever needs to be done if there's some upkeep. But we need to avoid what we've seen happen that really, I do believe, take away from the neighborhood. So this is a good first step, and I'm looking forward to the next council to work closely on reviving those bylaws and ensuring they do conform to our OP or maybe change it or exceed it, who knows. But that'll be a lot of work for the next council to continue to make sure that, and this is not going to lose, it's not going to lose any traction, it's not going to lose any sight. This is a big one I think for all of us, so thanks. And who are new council coming in is what I mean. All of us now and all the residents as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gardner, you've spoken once. Is there anyone else that would like to speak for a first time? Perhaps I will. Mr. Ramuno, if we go ahead with this, what's before us, are we able to slow down the development of, for lack of a better word, oversized homes or monster homes? Would that actually take effect? Through you.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. With this new process in place, subjecting new detached housing to site plan control, there is a new process in place, as I referred to in the report. They would be required, an applicant would be required to submit a drawings, a site plan application to the planning department for review, as opposed to proceeding to prepare their permit drawings directly to our building department. And through a zoning review, that's a 2 to 3 week process. This would add timing to the process. They would have to come in first. The site plan, those elevation drawings of their new build or expansion would have to be reviewed by staff. And we would work with the applicant to the best of our abilities, ensure that the architecture, the materials, roof treatments are more in keeping with what is within the surrounding area, albeit we still have the current zoning standards in place, but from design elements, material used, we'll have a say, and only when planning staff signs off on that site plan application will the applicant be given a green light to submit their permit application to our building department for building code review and issuance of a building permit. So it's definitely going to add time to the overall process.
But will it stop someone putting in an oversized home on a lot? You basically answered that. I just want that to be clear. That is the first step.
Yeah.
We're going to stop that because we're going to have the site plan control plan in front of us.
I just want, through you, Mr. Chair, I just want to be clear that we're still dealing with our current zoning standards, the 10 meter, 35% lot coverage. Staff will be able to work with those applicants to try and get them to even reduce those. But really, we're going to focus in on the architectural design of those homes and the materials that are used, roof pitches, roof styles. It'll be a negotiation among staff and the applicant.
So when will we be able to effectively? Is that after the architectural element that we've spoken? No. How
This is the first step, site plan control. We will have a say in affecting changes to the style. The next stage really is in the future, if we come back in the new year, to continue work on amendments to the zoning bylaw standards, if that happens in the new year. But with site plan control, we will be able to affect, I'm confident, affect some change with respect to some of the designs that we have seen in the past. But ultimately, if council wants to go down that route, it'll be looking towards making changes to those zoning standards, specifically the height and the lot coverage.
Okay, so I just don't want to rush while we're going through an election, and by the time the new council hits the road by next February, you've suddenly approved 15 of these homes that are so objectionable to the ratepayers here. I just want to be sure that that will not take place. And I know you can't say absolutely, but you will be negotiating and saying to people, like, we've got this stable neighborhood that you've got to adhere to, and it's not a free 7,000 square foot home that you're putting up. Okay.
That's correct.
That's right. All right. So, I'm hearing that our zoning needs to be addressed, and that is loud and clear. So how do we affect the zoning part, Mr. Rumino? When does that take place? Or is this taking place in the control site plan?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I mean, again, based on the direction from the June meeting, that'll be subject to a future public planning meeting, likely in early 2019 if council so directs, where I'll bring back, we've already reported once, but I think there was discussion about sitting down again with the various ratepayers associations to fine-tune the zoning bylaw and perhaps make refinements to the report that I presented to council back in June. But that'll be the next step sometime in 2019.
Is there any way that we could address that in this report, Mr. Rumino, that we want to move forward with that? Do you need direction to bring the elements that you had in June into moving forward? Is that covered in this report?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think that was clear in the recommendation adopted by council at that June 27th public planning meeting that staff be directed to report back regarding amendments to the at a future public meeting regarding the proposed draft zoning bylaw amendment.
And when will that next planning meeting be, Mr. Rumino?
Again, at this point, we're looking at sometime in 2019.
All right. Thank you very much. I'll go second round. Councilor Maracus, you haven't spoken for a first time, so I hope you don't mind, Councilor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to start off, I agree but disagree with Councilor Perry. While the professional opinion by Mr. Rumino stating that the zoning conforms to our OP to the letter of the law, that might be true, but I think it's quite clear and quite evident that it doesn't meet the intent of the OP. And that's the problem here that we're seeing this. And that's clear because we're seeing these homes that are being built and that they don't meet what our OP is talking about when it talks about protecting our stable neighborhoods. And so therefore there is a problem, there is an issue, and we need to fix it. And I think that's clear, and we all agree that there is a problem and we're looking to fix it. The site plan control is just a good first step. It's not going to solve the issue, it's not going to solve the problem. We need to move forward with this so we can move forward with the other points that need to come forward for us to be able to resolve this issue and to better protect our stable neighborhoods. So once those architectural controls come in and those guidelines, that will be a second step that will help, and then we need to make the zoning changes that are necessary to make sure that they align with the intent of our OP in better protecting those stable neighborhoods. I think this is pretty straightforward. I think, like I said, this is a good first step in front of us, and we just need to move forward so that way staff can do their job and we can get the information in front of us so we can make the decisions to protect those stable neighborhoods. That's it.
Councillor Gardner. Oh, Mayor Dahl, you haven't spoken for the first time. Sorry, Councillor Gardner, you're on cue still.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do support the process. I think the site plan is a good first step. There's still some work to do, obviously. But there's an interesting element in here that I think is really important, and it's on page 4 of 8, about halfway down. It's the third bullet point. It's the power to revoke any approval of plans and drawings within the stable neighborhood study area where the approval is granted in error or mistaken or incorrect information, or if the development has not been seriously commenced for 2 years after the approval has been granted. First of all, Mr. Ramon, if you could help me, what does seriously mean? Because we've had this discussion where, the weekend warriors, and we all like to dump on developers. There's 2 major developers in this room tonight. None of them are coming in and building single houses. It's typically weekend warriors that are doing this work. And so, first of all, could you tell me what seriously means? I would appreciate that.
Just before I do that.
Because that's a bit of a judgment call.
A weekend warrior, Mayor Daw, is someone that just does one at a time? Okay, thank you. Mr. Ramuno, please.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair, to the mayor. I mean, that bullet point really deals with, I mean, if staff have issued a signed off on a site plan application and new drawings, if they really, and it really haven't commenced, they haven't pulled their permit or if they pulled their permit, but seriously haven't dug the hole, haven't started construction. I mean, that's going to be a very rare case where we're going to have to use that clause, but we thought it was, important to include it if we're going to amend the bylaw, the site plan control bylaw. I'm not really sure whether there's going to be an instance where we're going to have to evoke that provision, but we're proposing to add that to our amended site plan control bylaw.
Is there any way we can tighten that up? Because that it's an issue. I mean, typically, when there is someone else in this room who's experienced, I think, an ongoing construction next to his house for a couple of years now, and it's very frustrating for someone living there when that goes on. Is there any way we can tighten that up? Because I think that would be one of the better things that we could do in order to bring some consistency, some predictability, some stability for people in the area. I mean, there's going to be some redevelopment. I think that's pretty much inevitable. You want that to happen quickly. Is there any way we can encourage, is there any way we control how quickly that can happen? And I don't necessarily expect an answer tonight, but if that's something you could look at and come back to us, I would certainly appreciate, because I think that's an important element.
Just to you, Mr. Chair, our solicitors assisting us with the preparation of that site plan control bylaw, so we'll work on
Thank you.
On that bylaw before council sees it next week to try and address that third bullet point.
Thank you. And if I may, would that be sort of, I hope you don't mind, Mayor Dahl, but if they gave a deposit and they didn't complete their work in 2000, they would forego that? I mean, we would have sort of guidelines on a time frame, Mr. Bermuno? That's just sort of my comment, but okay. Councillor Thompson, you haven't spoken for the first time, so I'll allow you to go next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. I certainly support the motion in front of us and, echo some of the comments that I've heard around the table from my colleagues. I think we all want to see more action sooner, but recognize that the process has taken a little while, and I'm supportive of this coming forward now, at least as a first step, and to begin the process of managing, while the expectation is that staff will continue to work and develop both the design guidelines as well as the other issues that have been addressed, and more action will come. And for the residents, I know there was some concern about inaction and that it's not taking as quickly a time as they'd like. I just ask that you bear with us, and we'll continue to move it forward and get it done.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner?
Are you sure? I have to disagree with a couple of things. The first thing is that it doesn't conform to the letter of the law, because it says in our official plan that the height should be taken from 10 feet to 9 feet. It's silent on where the measurement of the roof should be, to the mid or to the top point. But, so, I mean, right there, we have a problem that's in the stable neighborhood section. We have a problem, and we never corrected it. With respect to zoning bylaw trumps the OP, we're talking about something else. I am going to read this to you, hopefully for the last time, from the Planning Act. It's from the Planning Act, Section 26(9), and it's called Updating Official Plan, in brackets, Updating Zoning Bylaws, which states, no later than 3 years after a revision under subsection 1 or 8 comes into effect. So that's a new official plan or updating official plan. The council of the municipality shall amend all zoning bylaws that are in effect in the municipality, all zoning bylaws, to ensure that they conform with the official plan. We did a review. We never looked at the zoning bylaws for stable neighborhoods. This council does just not seem to get it. The Planning Act says we were supposed to do it, and we didn't do it. And I take part of the responsibility for that. But who takes the fall? It's the residents. It's the stable neighborhoods. And we have had an opportunity for 7 years. We didn't do it. I tried in October. It could have been done. It could have been done without rushing. You know, the comment was made, I think it was last week, that, or a few weeks ago, that our review of the zoning bylaw took 3 years. But you know what? That was the review of the zoning bylaw for the whole town of Aurora. We could have looked at one section, stable neighborhoods. So obviously I'm very disappointed. I think the residents are very disappointed. I think all of us can hold some responsibility around the table. It's not the first time I've said this about the Planning Act. In any case, it's been said tonight. So what are we going to do about it? We're just going to just let it go. It's really so many things. It's sad. It's enraging. It's embarrassing. Unprofessional. I could go on. Let's at least plan a planning. I have a right to say that because it's all true. Let's at least set a date for a public planning meeting. Let's get a public planning meeting going. At the very least, let's get it in January. Hey, we could have one in September. What a novel idea that would be. We could have one in August. And I know there are issues, and I think they're valid, and some of the councillors have mentioned them. But the more valid issue is that we have residents and neighborhoods that need protecting. So my last comment will be, as I was trying to say a couple weeks ago, Mr. Muno, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Muno, the thing that started me on this was resident complaining that the new houses that are coming in are destroying the streetscape because they're taking down the trees. Is there anything in the site plan control that is going to control the taking down of trees?
Mr. Ramuno.
We would, through you, Mr. Chair, we would then rely on our existing tree bylaw, and we'll work with our park staff when we do receive a site plan application if there are trees, and if they require amendments to that tree bylaw, that's the process we'll follow. But that's definitely something we will look at with respect to any new build, any application comes in, the removal of any trees. That will be part of the review.
Thank you, Mr. Bermudo. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. I definitely appreciate that. Trees are very important for many, many reasons, not only streetscape, but the residents who are here and have come here, this is the 4th time, are very interested in protecting their streetscape.
All right, Councillor, thank you. Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I appreciate what Councillor Gardner, the work she's put into this, obviously, as well. And I think she raises a good point. The interesting thing about the stable neighborhood definition in the official plan is that it's not just specifically talking about, say, the 3 study areas that we were talking about. So, for example, if we only move forward with zoning changes for the study areas, our official plan would technically still be in conflict with our zoning bylaw because there are other areas in stable neighborhoods that wouldn't be affected by height changes. So my point was, at the public planning meeting, was we have to address this issue. Again, just take a little bit of a step back. I know it's difficult to imagine doing that because while we do this, there are houses being built as we speak. But again, if the goal is to have the official plan and the zoning bylaw in harmony, even with the changes proposed at that planning meeting, we wouldn't have done that because there would have been stable neighborhood areas outside of the study area that would have been 10 meters, that would have been conflict with our official plan. So I think we, as many people have said, we all want to get to the same place. We're really discussing how we get there and when we get there. And because I think we all agree that there's an issue. And as I mentioned at the public planning meeting, as I mentioned again tonight, you know, even if we change the lot coverages to 30, 25, so long as all the setbacks are being adhered to, those with smaller properties might get kind of overly impacted negatively by those changes, and it wouldn't make that big of a difference on the massive lot properties, because they're still going to be able to build what most people would consider a monster home. Again, I use the example of the house or the property that's 10,000 square feet. A 30% lot coverage, again, assuming all the setbacks are taken into account correctly, would still allow for a 6,000 square feet house. Now, whether that's a 9-meter structure or a 10-meter structure, but that's still, I think most people here would consider a 6,000 square foot 2-story home, whether it's 9 or 10 meters, a monster home. We have to look at that, and I think we should look at it, and it certainly will be looked at when this comes back to public planning. And I just hope that some of the recommendations from staff are tailored a bit more to look at some of those issues as opposed to what was presented to us at the last public planning meeting. And certainly I was opposed to that, but if different ones come to a future public planning meeting in this council term, I'd be happy to look at those on face value and see if I think they would help the situation. And so we have to move forward, but I think we're all trying to get to the same place. It's just more of a question of how and when. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Maraca, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, seeing that a lot of the concerns are that development could occur while we're going through this process, and those monster homes could still go up, and we do have an interim control bylaw in place, is there any way that we could alter the interim control bylaw in the meantime to add, in essence, a freeze to development while we continue to work on this process?
Mr. Ramuno?
To you, Mr. Chair. Council could, council enacted a bylaw about back in January, I believe. Council could amend that bylaw, and I'll have to consult with legal, have to take a look, but could amend the bylaw to restrict development, put a freeze on all development within those areas for the remainder of the 1-year period. That may be a possibility. That would then put a freeze on any development, any issuance of any permits.
Thank you, Mr. Ramuno, and I guess Drew, I don't know if it's you or maybe our CAO or our clerk. How would we go about doing that if we wanted to go down that road? Would that be a motion? Could it be a motion under new business? Does it have to be a notice of motion? Does it have to be something that staff can bring back in a report?
Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Chair, excuse me. That seems fairly substantive to me. I would suggest a notice of motion might be the best way for that.
Councillor?
Thank you. While I don't agree with putting forward notices of motion during campaign season, unless it does have to deal with strictly with town business and moving town business forward, I do think that this is an important issue that if we do need to look at freezing development within these areas while we continue to work on this, and I think that's the concern that we're hearing from residents. I think it's something that we owe the residents and this town to look at and have a discussion about. So I think maybe that's something that we should, whether it's me or one of us puts forward a motion to have this discussion.
All right, thank you. Just before we call a vote, just my final comments on this. I agree with Councillor Gardner. I think what we need is some political will here to address this situation that's been going on. This council has no problem spending money. I've just did a quick figure. We're 42 million in the last 6 weeks. So we're putting all these things through, but we are not addressing something that is really, really important and has a huge impact. And we're being told repeatedly that this has to be done. So I'm the fact that we have and could have addressed this. I think I would. I'm all for having a meeting. I don't care what it takes. I would, unless there's a reason why we cannot move forward within the next 2 months, to put something in place and address the zoning and some of the other concerns. I'm not satisfied leaving this for until 2019, especially when we show the will to do other things. I mean, we're moving forward with the gymnasium. We haven't even seen anything at this council table, but I've seen lots here on 3 different occasions for the last 6 months that indicates that's a priority. So I'm all for moving forward with the planning meeting as soon as we can, and bring this top priority with the goal that we have something firmly in place for September. And it's not lame duck, because it's not implicating money. It is something that we should do for our residents, because they're asking and telling us to do so. So I'm all for what you're saying, Councillor Gardner. And I don't know how we'll go about that, but we've got till next week to figure it out. If there are no more comments, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you very much for everyone attending. We have a mandatory break, so we'll break for 10-minute recess. And All right, council, recess time is over. If you could take your seats, please. Thank you. Council, we did move our 11 forward. There are a number of people waiting for items, so would anyone care to bring those forward, or?
It's R1 and R2 now, but people are here.
R1, R2, and then we have 2 developers waiting for theirs. Also, we have members from the R3 as well.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, yeah.
So we'll go 1, 2, 3. R8. Well, we could bring them forward and get them out. Is that what you're saying, suggesting? All right. And those were site plan approvals, R8 and the other one, R10. Council, or committee, we've just sort of had a minor discussion here. There are 2 site plan approvals, R8 and R10. If no one has any comment, I would propose that we move those forward and deal with them quickly, and then we can move through our agenda. Mayor Dahl will move them forward. A seconder? Mayor Dahl, we don't see a seconder. All right, so we won't go that way. We'll go to R1, if that suits everyone. We're at the Hallmark Lands. Would someone care to put that forward? It should be noted that we have a replacement page, Mr. Clerk. Is that all that's on R1?
That's correct. The replacement page goes on.
The replacement page goes on the report. Do we have to move it or anything? Or just a memorandum? Okay, thank you. Just draw your attention to it. All right, I'm looking for a mover. Councillor Perry, seconded. Councillor Marakis. Comments, questions? I'll start with Councillor Gardner.
Could someone please tell me, if we go with the multi-purpose rectangular artificial turf field, the comment in the report was that there's not enough margins.
Not enough?
Distance on either side, so that it really wouldn't fit in that spot and that it would have to be turned?
Mr. Downey.
Well, we asked Mr. Downey.
Mr. Downey.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the ideal orientation for the field would be in a north-south direction. However, if you take a look at attachment
Right.
1, it shows it in blue as a north-south direction, and there is not sufficient room in order to fit that in ensuring that we have some buffer around the field. So we have then provided an optional orientation, which you see in red, which is a east-west orientation. I'm sorry, am I going to? Have you got that?
No, I know that. Thank you.
Okay, so what we are proposing is in attachment number 2, putting it somewhat on an angle in order to maximize any north-south orientation we can get and still fit the field within the given lands.
I have had the experience of placing a tennis court in an east-west kind of orientation. It doesn't work. If we are going to spend all of this money on an artificial turf field, it has to be north-south. You can't do it east-west because of the sun. It's just not possible. We just can't do it. We'll be laughed out of town. Apart from that, you just don't do that. It has to be north-south because of visibility. It's the same with, well, obviously the same with tennis courts, the same with, it says it in here, same with a multi-use field. I can't imagine that as a council we would spend all this money to put a field in a placement that is not supported by, I'm sure they're not here tonight, by the groups, for tournaments. Anyway, the other thing is, why would we remove lights from Norm Weller Park? I mean, what soccer field is to make that well used? It needs lights. I understand that it's not going to be used as well as an artificial turf field, but soccer fields need lights. So I just really am gobsmacked by this whole thing. I'll let someone else speak.
All right, thank you, Councillor Gardner. Mayor Dahl.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I cannot support this as it's turned out. We got here because council elected to go with 1-in-1, and some councillors had expressed concern that there was information from staff that was incorrect, but that information didn't come to the rest of council. So if there's a problem with information that we based our original decision on, then perhaps we should be going back to our original decision and looking at what those challenges were with information and having.
Councillor Marakis, is there a point of order or something? There is no such thing. I'll ask that if it's a point of order. Otherwise, you can speak to it when it's your turn, Councillor. And when you're recognized, I'll let you ask for it. Mayor Dahl, you can continue. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor. Mayor Dahl.
So my suggestion is that we refer this back to staff. If there's concerns with data, then let's have that discussion. Let's understand what the concerns are, so we can all participate, so that we can make a discussion. So I'll put a motion to refer this back to staff on the table. And if there's a second, great. If not, then we'll just move on.
Councillor Gardner, you'll second. Mr. Clerk, what do we do in this situation where we have people lined up and it's referred? Do we have anything in our procedure that would...
Procedure bylaws, through Mr. Chair, speaks to sort of a decorum aspect of that, but it would be the chair's call on whether the amendment's accepted.
Mayor Dahl, I'm wondering if we could hear some of the other comments and then come back to you. Thank you very much. Did you want to conclude with anything else?
No, I'm
Mayor
good.
Dahl, you still have
right
the...
now. Thank you.
Councillor Perry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to, is it Ms. McDougall or Mr. Downey? Ms. McDougall. It depends on the question. Why would it be, so we're looking at concept 2, and I am seeing the orientations being almost identical for the baseball as well as for the multi-purpose field. If we're concerned about light in individuals' eyes, which is what I heard from Councillor Gartner and the issues of sunlight, my orientation's a little bit off here, but based on more or less the 45-degree angle that it would be coming out of a baseball when somebody lines up to hit it, would we not have the same concern with light and people being able to see the ball? Because to me the same concerns exist whether we have the orientation is exactly the same on these two.
Well, I'm going to look at Mr. Downey, although you did call for Ms. McDougall.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the two aren't necessarily comparable, so let's talk about ball. Balls played with such a fashion that someone's got to have their sun in there. They're going to have sun in their eyes at a particular time. It's preferable if the batter does as opposed to the fielder. because balls are coming at them, and it could be high, it could be in the sun. There's a chance of injury. So the ball diamond is oriented in a preferable location, knowing that there's always going to be someone at a disadvantage with regards to the sun. With regards to soccer, if you orient it north-south, the likelihood of sun being in someone's eyes on a constant basis is almost negligible. It doesn't occur near as much as it would in a ball situation. So they're not comparable. You are correct. If you are the batter, the sun will be in your eyes. However, if you were a fielder, it will not be.
Councillor?
Okay. Appreciate that.
Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am not in favor of the recommendation on the floor. I was not in favor of the one-in-one option, and it's starting to at least become apparent to me more and more that was my decision, at least in that regard, was correct. I'm not in favor of allocating more money to an option that I didn't agree with, and I'm certainly not in favor of the work at Norm Weller Park being altered to accommodate the one-in-one option that I was opposed to. I think that decreasing the lighting at Norm Weller Park means that we're shifting the usage as opposed to adding usage. I think one of the things that people talked about when the one-in-one option was talked about was that we're going to be adding usage. But if there's going to be no lighting anymore at Norm Weller, again, it definitely shifts the numbers a little bit. And again, I'm not in favor of it. So, I mean, Mayor Dahl made mention of referring this back to staff, but I mean, referring it back to staff might give, some councillors a bit more time to look at the numbers, but I'm just not in favor of what's on the floor, so I'll be voting against it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you to either Ms. McDougall or Mr. Downey. In the past, we've talked about the potential for a mutual arrangement with Cardinal Carter and to build a multi-purpose artificial turf field there as well, like we've done with Maximilian Colby. Given that we already have a couple artificial turf multi-purpose fields, and this would be, I guess, our third one, does this impact any of staff's recommendations with regards to Cardinal Carter going forward?
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, with regards to Cardinal Carter, we have had some discussions with the school board with the thought that we would be perhaps putting a community center in the lands adjacent to Cardinal Carter. We were looking at a facility that would be more of a stadium facility. It would have more seating than you would normally see at some of our facilities. Something they could have a regional championship game at, or something along those lines. So it would be an upgraded facility than you would see in this particular location.
So this would have no impact then?
It would serve a different purpose. The idea of having a field here was in order to provide additional playing opportunities in the expansion of not only soccer but lacrosse and football.
Sure.
That can also happen at Cardinal Carter, but Cardinal Carter, we were looking at a unique opportunity to build a championship facility for whatever activity was going to take place on that.
Thank you.
Are there anyone else for the first time? I have a few questions. So who asked for an artificial turf, or is this a staff recommendation?
Through you, or to you, Mr. Chair, Council asked us to look at a multi-purpose facility, and we only build artificial turf multi-purpose facilities. We wouldn't build a natural turf multi-purpose facility. Reason for that is if you're doing multi-purpose, the idea is that it has a greater amount of use. Grass will not hold up to that. Additional to that, normally you'll have lines for not only soccer, but you'll have them for lacrosse, and you'll have them for football, and you'll have them for rugby. So you'll have a number of different lines on the field, and us being able to come back on a regular basis and reline that field isn't a practical solution. So if we are looking at if we're looking at a multi-purpose field, our recommendation, we automatically look at a artificial turf.
Thank you very much. I appreciate what the advantages of a multi-purpose are, and I have no problem with that. We do have one like a kilometer down the road already being made at this time at Shepherd's Bush, a multi-purpose facility.
So, Mr. Chair, that's absolutely correct.
Okay. So, I mean, this all started at a budget where Councillor Kim suggested that we build 2 ball diamonds for baseball. And we assumed it would be at Hallmark. I was not in favor of Hallmark as a location. There were no alternatives. There is alternatives here, and I appreciate that. And there are financial implications, which I appreciate as well. I was not in favor of using the Hallmark lands for anything but economic. Especially when we have repurposing sites that will do. So again, I'm sort of on the same line as Councillor Tom. I'm not in favor of one-on-one. I'm not in favor of anything. I just think we could do at other sites. So I'm not going to support this. And obviously we are already in the process of putting up an artificial field on Shepherd's Bush. We have plans and options, Machel, Bloomington lands, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Anyways, the reason it was brought because we said multi-purpose, and I appreciate staff for bringing that up, and I appreciate also that whenever the word multi-purpose is used, artificial turf is the best long-term application for that. And I'm all in support and would take that recommendation. Unfortunately, it's on employment lands, and I can't support that. For a second time, Councillor Perry.
Thank you. Mr. Downey, do we have any fields that have this orientation right now so that I could go and take a look?
Mr. Downey?
Mr. Chair, yes, we have 2. Highland I'm sorry, east-west? Is that what you're talking about, or north-south?
I'm talking about southwest-northeast.
Okay.
As is option 2.
Okay. No.
We don't have anything like that?
No. We have 2 fields that are east-west, and that's at Highland and Summit, and all the rest are north-south.
Okay. I think I'd like to go take a look before next week, so thank you.
Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not going to really add anything to my previous comments, but I just want to know the additional funding, $1,050,000 of it will be taken from the Park DC reserve. What's the balance of that reserve?
Mr. Elliott, do you have that figure?
I'll need a minute, but I believe it's currently at about $8.5 or $9 million in the negative position.
Used to be more. Yeah, I think it was minus 15 if I recall, but the answer you'll find for you, Councillor Tom, but he seems to think it's about minus 8 or 9 million at the time.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there are no more questions or comments, I'll call for a vote. Oh, Mayor Daw. Before.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My comment just to clarify for Councillor Tom was not to refer this back to staff, but to go back to the original decision, which would be a reconsideration, obviously not a referral, so I was incorrect there.
You would like to, so if this is defeated, we can go back to the original, okay. If I understand correctly. Just gets defeated. All right, so if there's no more comments or questions, I'll put this to a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That is defeated. Next item, R2, sign bylaw. Anyone care to put this?
We can do that,
Mr. Clerk, Councillor Perry has asked, can we vote on to receive the report?
Through you, Mr. Chair. And we've done in the past where we understand that council isn't trying to not receive the report, so we would carry that forward as administrative change.
Very good. Item R2, the proposed amendments to the sign bylaw. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Gardner, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Thompson. Comments, questions? Here we go. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just state that, which this should be no surprise to anyone around the council table, I am opposed to the changes that are recommended. I find A-frame signs to be aesthetically unpleasing. You know, there have been studies in the past that show in the 1970s, people saw 500 different forms of advertisement a day. In the 2010s, that's moved up anywhere from 4,000 to 10,000 advertisements a day. I don't think people need to see any additional signage to indicate where businesses that everybody in town know where they are located. I understand in a location like Yorkdale, when you have businesses that are on a first story and a second story and a basement story, the need to have some additional indications of where things are. But in Aurora, I find them aesthetically unpleasing. I don't think they're required. And if you look back at some of the changes that, or the comments made by the chamber, it was indicated that only 5% of respondents thought that we needed to make these changes. So I'm not inclined to make any changes tonight.
Thank you, Councillor. Mayor Dahl.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen. First of all, thank you for the work. There was obviously a lot of research that went into that, so thank you. Could you just explain a bit about the process you went through again in terms of who you were reaching out to and the conversations that you had?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Well, the Chamber did set out a survey to their members, and they provided us with the results of their survey. And from that, I sat down with the Executive Director and another gentleman, and we had a discussion around the results of the survey. But I also recently met with Dr. Moore and Javid, probably about a week and a half ago, to also have discussions with them. But over the course of when we amended the bylaw in 2016 to remove A-frames, we do extensive education with businesses, and we did receive some feedback then. For the most part, businesses were responsive and removed their A-frame signs. If you drive down Industrial Parkway, you'll see that it is a lot cleaner. But there were some concerns from those businesses in terms of exposure to the streets.
Thank you. And I certainly appreciate Councillor Perry's point of view. At the same time, I also appreciate the businesses want to advertise, and they're always looking for that opportunity to get their name out there. And notwithstanding the delegates' request to increase the size, I think this might be a good way to start to look at how we might do a change that's been done in conjunction with not only our staff, but obviously with what other municipalities are doing and with what the Chamber finds would be beneficial to their membership. So I will support the recommendation on the floor.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner.
I also thank Ms. Van Leeuwen for all of the work that she's done. And I also don't like the look of A-frame signs, but I think that they do serve a purpose for businesses. And I wouldn't mind trying this on a temporary basis. The problem is that, as Ms. Van Leeuwen knows so well, people don't take their signs down at night and on weekends. So what is the cost for us to monitor this? Are we going to be, I know it's $100 for each sign, but through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. Van Leeuwen, are we going to have enough staff to monitor this? Because if this is not monitored well and enforced, then we just shouldn't do it.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, a bylaw undertakes numerous activities and are, involved in numerous education and enforcement programs. So it will depend on what's trending. Of course, we are active in our community and we are present in the community. So if we see a sign that's non-compliant, we will approach that business and request that they obtain a permit. So it's hard to put a cost at this point in time to the enforcement aspects.
Are we going to have enough bylaw people to drive through the main commercial streets of town and the industrial parkway area every evening to make sure that these signs are down?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have staff on in the evenings, our part-time staff, and on the weekends. So it may not be every evening, but certainly we will be, like I said, in the community in the evenings, and we will pay some attention to whether or not signs are being removed and approach businesses that are not compliant.
Thank you, and a follow-up. And no disrespect to your department, but with the way it was before, when the A-frames were popping up and they were there and they were prolific and they stayed there. So were we doing something different then than we're going to do now?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we will take a more proactive approach with respect to A-frame signs, and we have, over the last 2 years, as I've mentioned, we have been out speaking with the businesses door to door for those who have had A-frames out that were non-compliant, and we've been doing that education, and we will continue with that education.
Thank you. I'm not sure to Mr. Clerk or to Council, is there a way we can put this in a motion that we try it for a year and see how it goes? Because it is visually very, very unattractive, but the balance is we want to help our smaller businesses. So maybe it's worth trying for a year, but if it becomes just out of control, then I think we need to look at it again.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the proposed change is obviously to allow portable signs, and they will be allowed on public property, but only in the downtown. So I'm assuming that means Yonge Street and like Mosley. So could you expand? It's Yonge Street and which other streets? That's through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. Van Leeuwen.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we will refer to the mapping that's included in the promenade study. So it includes all the Yonge Street and portions of Wellington as well.
But just Yonge and Wellington?
Yes, that's what we're considering at this point in time.
So the village streets you're just proposing Yonge and Wellington, but none of the ancillary streets in between, like Mosley or Church or...
Like I said, we're going to work with our planning department to establish what those areas that were identified in the promenade study, and we'll include a map in the amendments to the sign bylaw.
Thank you. Looking at the chart that's provided, the table with comparisons to other municipalities, some allow on public property, some don't. It seems looks like some of the municipalities have exceptions for downtown areas. I think the only concern I have with A-frames, I'm not a big fan of them either, but if it's on business property or private property, I don't think I really have a problem with that. Public property, though, especially on the sidewalk in the downtown, might not be as big of an issue on Wellington, but on Yonge, especially just south of Wellington, the sidewalks aren't very wide, and the way that's written is that the A-frame sign is going to be placed adjacent to the building, forcing pedestrians to walk closer to the road. Now, obviously, there's parking on Yonge, and obviously the speed limit's 50, and traffic's usually stopped there, which is usually the problem, not so much speeders. But, I mean, obviously, some municipalities might do it differently, and they might have their A-frames pushed out to the curb. I don't know which is better. My opinion would be we shouldn't allow them on public property at all. But private property I have no problem with, but, you know, those sidewalks, you know, to me, they're not very big as it is, and to start jamming A-frame signage there, I don't know how stoked I am on that. Quite frankly, that would be the only change I'd have to what's proposed, is just to not allow them on public property, period. I mean, the regional intersections allow for A-frame signage. I'm looking to the mayor, but I'm sure he doesn't know that particular regulation within the region. But there's A-frame signage for developments in Bradford and like all over the place, and they look, in my opinion, not fantastic. Now, we don't have authority to regulate regional intersections, but I'm not a big fan, and I know lots of people complain about them. So the idea that you're going to have more dotted along Yonge, south of Yonge and Wellington, I don't know, especially if it's on public. Again, private, I think we should allow them. So my opinion is that if we're going to allow portable signs, it should be on private property and not on public property. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. I certainly appreciate the work the staff did with this. I know earlier this year we asked them to go out and look at best practices, report back to us with the intention of allowing A-frames and, you know, really just focus on the regulatory provisions that kind of govern them. I guess my question, though, is similar to other things we've done. Would it be the intention to come back to the next council a year in or two and report back on the impact and the success or not success of these amendments? Through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you to Mr. Chair, we would need to amend the sign bylaw, but we could certainly commit to coming back in a year or 2 years, and if we wanted to then repeal these amendments, we could do it at that time based on our experience.
Thank you. And my only other comment really is with regards to the communication plan. I know there's going to be, you know, some reliance on the chamber to get the message out, but I still think that there may be businesses that may or may not be a chamber member, and so somehow we just want to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks and we get the message out to all businesses.
Anyone else for a first time? I just want to thank you very much. I'm looking at the chart. Yours is highlighted in yellow, and it says, and it's titled A-frame sign comparisons. Are they allowed? And we have yes in yellow. Is that yes if we approve this?
To you, Mr. Chair, if you see under Aurora, it's highlighted in blue, it says proposed, that our proposed amendments would, yes, permit A-frame signs.
Thank you. It does say proposed. I didn't see that. What I'm doing is I'm just looking down the column and everyone says yes. So, you know, myself, and I think I made this comment before, you know, the A-frames are unsightly, and so that was the reason we took them, safety and such. And we have no one on our streets on the downtown core. And I've been, and I'm sure everyone has visited, but if you ever take note, really busy streets, Yonge Street, tourist areas, they have lots of people and they have A-frame signs. So, I mean, having a business, I had a business on Yonge Street. I used my A-frame every single day, brought it in every single night because it was on Yonge Street, down at Yonge and Eglinton in the city of Toronto. And they were just, it's just predominantly, it's just the way people do business. It's a little more refined, as we saw illustrated in Yorkville. And by permitting, I think we can kind of give some guidelines to what safety and what is conforming. So we can take on an artistic sort of look here. Anyways, I'm in favor of moving forward on this. What I'm a little bit concerned with is I see signs everywhere in our town right now, and delegate showed pictures, of Yonge Street, and again, even today, Ms. Van Leeuwen, I sent in a concern from a resident, and the amount of signs on Yonge Street, I was actually quite taken aback. I think I lost count on one corner at about 9. Every size and everything. And are we not? You said we're doing an education and processes. Is there? Do they put them back up that quick after you go by?
To you, Mr. Chair, it's an ongoing issue. Signs, it's ongoing. So we do have the ability to remove portable signs, and there is a sign retrieval fee if someone wants to get their sign back, but it is an ongoing compliance and enforcement issue.
And I appreciate the education process. In fact, that's how I became aware of the removal of A-frames, because when I was about doing my business, people would say, "Councillor, I had someone from bylaw come in and tell me to remove my A-frame sign, I need that sign." And so this is sort of how it was brought forward. The education part was remove it. We have a new bylaw. And so the feedback I was getting was, we would like that back. We didn't know it was being removed. What's the process and how did this come about? And so I appreciate all the work you've done bringing this forward. I'm just having a little difficulty concentrating. Mr. Mayor, you're going to your left and your right. Are you done? Okay, thank you. So my point is I would like to see a little more development in A-frames and signs generally throughout our business. Industrial Parkway, gas stations on the corners, strip plazas. I mean, they're different, and there should be different applications. This report is dealing just strictly with the downtown core, as we call it, Yonge Street and Wellington, and only A-frames.
Well, it's dealing with the entire town, and A-frames only, that type of sign form. We are suggesting that in the downtown core, we would allow them to be placed on public property, mainly because the buildings are right up on the property line and they don't have any private property to place the signage for a large part of Yonge Street. In other areas, we're suggesting that A-frames would be permitted, but only on private property.
So, just so I'm clear, on Industrial Parkway, are signs allowed? A-frame signs?
We're proposing that on private property they would be permitted, subject to setbacks to driveways, sight line size, and other things. It's in this chart.
Thank you. So yes, they would be allowed on Industrial Parkway because they are private. Okay. And gas stations, they're using a different sign right now. They're using what I think the delegate described as platforms, a bigger.
To you, Mr. Chair, again, on private property in compliance with the provisions that would be in the bylaw, they would be permitted. The signs that were shown on this in those photos, they appear to be larger than what we would permit, and I have some concerns with respect to sightline issues because they seem to be placed right on the corner, maybe in the daylight triangle. So we will, again, that's an enforcement and compliance issue, and we deal with those when we are aware of them.
Okay. Well, I'm in favor of moving forward because I've heard from the business community that this is where they would like to go. And I think it's important that we listen to planning and business and sports and everyone as they go about doing business here in our town. So we'll go around again. Councillor Gardner, I've got you for a second time.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the chart, the colored chart. With respect to only in downtown core, main streets and village streets, subject to $2 million liability insurance. So that means the business has to have $2 million liability insurance?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct, and they need to name the town in that insurance liability, so it's their insurance.
So that's an indemnification letter?
An indemnification,
they name the town?
yes.
Thank you. And the other question is about the last square, rectangle actually. need to include provision to exempt from heritage approval?
Ms. Van Loon?
Through you, Mr. Chair, in our sign bylaw, there's a provision related to any signage that's placed in the heritage area, and there's a map that that approval from our Planning and Development Services Department is received prior to the issuance of that permit. So what we're suggesting is, because these are portable signs, that we wouldn't put them through that scrutiny.
Councillor?
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? If there's no one else, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We'll move on to R3. Cultural Partners update. Would someone care to move? Councillor Gardner, Councillor Maracas. Comments, questions? All right, pretty straightforward. Councillor Gardner, we'll start with you.
Thank you. With respect to the groups that were consulted, there's a couple of lists, and I believe somewhere it says not only the cultural groups, but also other stakeholders.
Oh, good, thank you.
I'm not sure who gets this question. Hi. Not that I can find what I'm talking about at the moment, but somewhere it has the 9 groups, then it has staff, and then it has, well, as I can't find it, maybe I'll think about it and ask.
All right, Councillor. Is there anyone else who would like to comment a question? I did have one comment, and I shared it with the CAO, but is there any expanding of the stakeholders and cultural partners in mind as we go forward? Ms. McDougall.
Through to Mr. Chair, with regards to the cultural partners at this point, based on Council's direction in 2016, the definition of the partners was approved by Council to be partners that are identified as any group, organization that is financially supported through direct funding or exclusive use of town facilities in the delivery of cultural programming. So at this point, by that definition, we've included the partners that we have that relationship with. That's not to say that we won't be expanding for further inputs and stakeholder involvement. We know that there are a multitude of cultural interests within the community that we want to make sure we consult with. The initial partnered table that we brought together for this step was based on Council's definition of the cultural partners.
Okay. So my comment basically is about how some, like Music Aurora, who are partnering with everyone. Councillor Perry, you have a point of order that I'm going to rule on?
Yes, I'd like to see you rule on it. Councillor Abel, you're a member representative of Music Aurora. You're asking for, directly impacting them. I think that there are probably times when you shouldn't be asking an organization that you're a part of to be a part of a municipal organization.
Well, Councillor Perry, I will continue, but you have no clue what I'm going to say. So I appreciate that you've got assumptions. So I will speak on behalf of the music population in our community, and there are many. That would like to, and there isn't music in this at all, and they are an intricate part of culture. And I think that if you were broaden the scope, they should be included in some of the dialogue going forward. when you're speaking, because we're talking about facilities and funding opportunities and partnerships and all those sort of things that are going to enhance and grow the cultural landscape, that would be part of the component. I know at this table there are some that are absolutely opposed to that, but I'm representing the community at large, and I think it would be fair to broaden the scope of some of the partners, and that's why I asked. Would you like to comment?
Through Mr. Chair, to you, Mr. Chair. At this point, the direction of council is by definition of, and that's what staff are working around based on council's approval of what a cultural partner is. If that's to change and we want to broaden it, council can provide me that direction and we can do so. The direction of 2016, by defining it, helped to at least create a group of organizations that we could work with on an initial level. We have Excel spreadsheets that go well beyond multitude of different parties and interests that we could spread out when we're looking for more research. At this point, defining it as it is, it helped us create that criteria, and that was council's direction. So if there's something different and council wishes to change that, we can do that. At this point, I have that direction of council to work with.
So at this time, your answer would be that you're not going to open it up. You've got direction from council, and that will be what we're going to use as the model for now.
Mr. Chair, if I may, to get the next step going, I would suggest sticking with the current parties that are at the table that are in this report that are defined by council. As we broaden the scope and get more, especially if there is certain elements that need to be researched deeper, we would like to broaden that, and that just comes more of pulling on additional research. To start off with helping to define or focus on what our next objective is, where we should be focused with regards to the cultural master plan, getting this partners group together. I think there's a great strength around that table that could assist with that direction, at least starting things off.
Okay. There is a music strategy that was adopted, was recognized as an economic development potential, and it was adopted by this council. I'm just highlighting that there is precedent. I'll just leave it at that at the moment. I just think it would be prudent, in my mind, the scope. And if you can't do anything until you get direction, I appreciate that, and I thank you for your answer. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you.
Second time.
Through you to Ms. McDougall, I'm looking at page 7. It's actually part of the consultant's report. Step 2, stakeholder consultation. It has the 9 groups, and then it has plus senior management, plus other key opinion leaders. Do you have any idea who that would be?
What page is that on?
I'm on page 7 at the bottom.
Thank you.
These are one-on-one meeting phone interviews.
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not familiar. I do know that he, the consultant, did research and do a polling of other cultural centers, of other cultural facilities, and that may be what he's speaking to as it relates to key leaders of other centers or other master plans, because I know he did do some research, as noted above, with other municipalities. It's possible that's what he references, but I could get a clarification for next week.
That would be great, because I'd love to know who our key opinion leaders are in town. Thank you.
I am going to just highlight in the report, before I call a vote, on page 3, workshop agenda and observations. So, yeah, I think it's the 5th. It speaks to what I'm talking about, a lack of awareness and consideration of economic impact as a driver of success for the cultural arts. Again, a music strategy does recognize that there's an economic impact to holding festivals, et cetera, like that. So I think between the consultant and the feedback, there should be enough there to consider broadening the scope into the music field. All right, seeing that there's no more comments or questions, I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Next item. Are we going to R4, or would we highlight at this time anyone that would like an item? Would someone care to put that on the floor? Mayor Dawes, that's seconded. Councillor Thompson, call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We'll go to R8. Anyone care to put that on the floor? Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Seconded. Councillor Gardner, does you move your hand? No? Councillor Thompson, sorry. Comments, questions? Councillor Perry?
Thank you, and I think I know what Councillor Gardner is going to ask. Just through you to Mr. Amuno, is there any consideration towards having more affordable units in this to allow individuals who can't afford the very expensive homes to still live in this type of residence?
Mr. Ramuno.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't know what the pricing of the units are going to be. I mean, the applicant is here. I haven't had that discussion, but I can certainly have a discussion with them and provide additional feedback to council with respect to the cost of the monthly cost of these units. There is a combination of independent and assisted living suites proposed within the building.
Thank you. Councillor Perry?
Thank you. I remember my feelings, it was an expectation that I had that there would be at least some affordable units in this facility. So that's my hope, and I look forward to hearing back next week.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. I appreciate that. I actually wasn't going to say that, but so this was on a cluster residential designation with a minor institutional. This land is on the moraine. It's very sensitive land. It got taken to the OMB by the developers. The OMB upheld that this was very sensitive land, and originally this was for a school, minor institutional, and the OMB said that when that school was built, it should have some serious environmental accommodations. What we have here is certainly not intended to be put on the moraine, and the developer has been able to do this because none of the suites will have kitchens, so it falls under a different classification. So I just would have been remiss if I hadn't stood up and said I think this is a blow for the environment, and I'll vote against it again as I have in the past.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any other comments, questions? I have a question, Mr. Ramuno. Is this part of a Young Street, as I recall, right on the street is institutional zoned?
To you, Mr. Chair, no, but this was part of the original Coots application, the cluster residential development. There was originally a elementary school site identified in this area. It was no longer required, but the OPA 34, that Young Street Secondary Plan, does allow for minor institutional uses such as this retirement home, and that was considered as part of the original Coots application. That institutional block was identified as part of that review, the block plan, subdivision, and zoning application. So it is a permitted use in that Yonge Street secondary plan.
OP 34.
Yes.
That's what I seem to recall, and I didn't ask my question correctly, but you did answer it. Originally, it was allowed and has been allowed along that corridor, Yonge Street. The OP 34 allows institutional on that spot. And there's no environmental features on this, and on this site I see it circled. I'm looking at page 11. It's tabled land.
Through Mr. Chair, that's correct. The Conservation Authority has reviewed the application. All the required background studies have been submitted, specifically the hydrogeological report in support of the site plan application has been submitted and reviewed.
Councillor Gardner alluded to the fact that there's no kitchen, so is this an assisted living residence? Mr. Bermudo?
To use, Chair, that's correct. It's an institutional use, a retirement home, 250 suites. Majority of them are independent living suites. There are a portion, about 39, 40, that are assisted living. So it's Del Manor does a number of these projects throughout the GTA.
So this is no different than the building that we're permitting on Yonge Street behind the United Church, except that one is 7 stories, this one's 5.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much. So basically my comment is that these institutes are down and permitted in this Yonge Street area and are needed. There's a draw for it. They're assisted living, so they're not an affordable place that people can age in place. They're for those people that need assistance. And so there's a need for that. So, I approve the location and the application, and I'm in favor of moving forward with it. I'll go to Councillor Gardner for a second time. Is there anyone for a first time? Okay, go ahead, Councillor. Councillor Perry, did you want to speak for first time? Or did you? Oh, yes, that's right, you were doing. Sorry, Councillor Gardner.
My point was and is that this land is on the Oak Ridges Moraine. Extremely sensitive environmental land. So sensitive that when the OMB ruled on this land, when they thought there was going to be just a school, they said that environmental measures should be taken with respect to that school. So what we have now is a 5-story retirement home. It really, for sure, it wasn't envisioned to be on this part of the Oak Ridges Moraine. And it's only got away with it because they're not having kitchens in the living spaces. So that was the loophole.
Yeah, Councillor Gardner, that's what I asked. It's institution, and that's permitted on the Yonge Street corridor there. That's why I thought I'd bring it up.
Minor institution.
Mr. Ramuno, would you care to?
It really doesn't matter because it's passed, but minor institution is what is allowed.
Okay. Oh, I just
like a school.
I just appreciate knowing
Thank
the difference. You. Okay. Councillor Perry.
Thank you. I wanted to, not everyone was around the council table when this property was sold, and we were told that there were going to be affordable units on this site. So that's why I asked. So that's why I'm looking for clarification.
Thank you for that. Are there any other comments, questions? I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That passes. We'll go to R10. Would someone care to put that on the floor? Looking left, looking right. Mayor Dahl, seconded. I'm looking for a seconder. Councillor Thompson, thank you. Any comments, questions? All right, I'm not seeing any comments or questions coming up. Call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. All right. Mr. Clerk, where are we? R4? Thank you. Councillor Gardner?
Didn't see my hand, but it's a negative vote for that.
Yes, I did note it. Everyone else put their hand up, so it passed.
Okay. No, I know that, but was I counted as a negative vote?
That's correct.
Thank you.
I don't surmise it, but I noted that you did. Okay. Aurora Economic Development Board. Do I have a mover and a seconder for this? Anyone on the left want to go? Okay, Councillor Perry. Councillor Tom. Sorry, you guys have dominated. Councillor Maracas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to thank all the work that our CAO and also Anthony IRL and the rest of the staff have done in bringing this forward and developing the board and the work that council's done, Mayor, Councillor Thompson, and also the work of the four members of the board of the working group right now that are going to eventually create this board that we're looking at putting forward today and moving forward with. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to work on the economic development within our town. But, you know, within the report, it does speak about recognition of the past work of EDAC. And so I think that, you know, it is important. I don't know, it does talk about emotion, but I just think it's important to recognize those that did all that work on that committee. You know, Mary Lee Harris, Rosalind Gonzalez, Bruce Walkinshaw, Don Constable, and the chamber members. Javed Khan was there for half, and Paul Smith was there for the other half. And also Councillor Perry and Councillor Abel for the work that they did on that committee. And you know, they did do a lot of work, and it's unfortunate that it ceases to exist, but we are moving forward, I think, in a better way with the board. And I think we have some very strong citizen members of this board, and I think that when we add another 4 to this, it'll be extremely strong as we move forward in developing that economic development within our town. So thank you, Mr. CAO, for developing this and putting forward the basically template for us to move forward.
Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I put forward the notice of motion to go to this or to have staff look at the different options, it's really because a corporation will enable the municipality to do things that a department of the town of Aurora cannot do. So Councillor Maracas was 100% correct in applauding Mr. Nadarozny and the work that his team has done in getting us here. And this board especially will be able to do things that a municipality can't. And one of the big ones is be a little bit more proactive in how lands are redeveloped. And so I think that's a very key element to all of this. So I thank Mr. Nadarozny again, like Councillor Maracas, for all the work that's gone into this.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. I just wanted to know, there's different terms for the different directors. I think it's 1, 2, 3, and 4. How will that be? How is that going to be structured? Through Mr. Chair to Mr. Nadarozny.
Mr. Nadarozny. Through Mr. Chair, ultimately the board will decide, but my recommendation would be simply a draw of names out of a hat kind of approach.
Thank you.
Seeing no other comments?
Oh, there's one more. Under confidentiality, is council going to be completely arm's length? Is all the information confidential from us?
Mr. Nadarozny?
Do you, Mr. Chair? No, it's not the intention that all the information would be confidential to council, but it does allow for a specific opportunity that maybe wouldn't be appropriate for council to be aware of at an early stage, that a proponent or developer might not wish to come to this council. It would provide a forum for that, but in terms of the workings of the board, they would be absolutely open to council.
Thank you. I was looking at confidentiality, but I guess it's for the people who are on the board to be confident. Thank you.
Calling a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries. R5. A mover and a seconder. Councillor Tom, thank you. Seconded by looking for a seconder. Mayor Daw, thank you. Comments, questions? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. I think we do this every election term, and I'm thinking it's the CAO who is generally appointed. Are there any things that you will not decide and that you will leave to the next council? Or will you try and leave most things to the next council and only put your attention to certain things?
Mr. CAO.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the intent would be only to move those items forward that are important to the operation of the town. So anything that's new or anything that can be held over till the new council would certainly be held.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Did that carry? Yes, sir. All right. We are going on to item 6 now. Financial Advisory Committee detailed budget reviews to be received. Well, we have a member from the Finance Advisory Committee. Would you care to move it? Councillor Thompson, seconded. Councillor Marakis. Any comments, questions? Councillor Marakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once again, I just want to thank Councillor Thompson for putting this forward and to recreate the Finance Advisory Committee, and also the work that Mayor Daw, Councillor Thompson, and Councillor Kim, along with staff, have done to look at finding those efficiencies and over the years. And we've actually come forward with, I think, a very good process that has allowed us to streamline the budget process, but not just forget about it, not look at the line items, but provide a standard that sets it where we stay balanced throughout every year, and everyone kind of knows what the increases will be, and we're not jumping all over the place. So I think it's some great work done by the committee, and I want to commend them for that. And I think that we're in a strong position moving forward with a committee like this and continuing to look at those places that we can find those efficiencies. So once again, thank you, Councillor Thompson, for all that work.
Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I echo comments that Councillor Marakis brought forth. Thank you to the committee, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Kim, and Mayor Dodd. Just really has shaped up the way we approach our finances and the way we understand, where we are throughout the whole, year. And when we do come down to budgeting, it's just a great package of information. It allows us to know what's happening all the way along, and just thank you to the staff very much for working very diligently on this. It's a very, very productive committee, and I want to thank you guys very much. And it will set up the new council, I think, moving forward as well, and hopefully not taking as long as, well, my 8 years ago now term, where the first couple of years were, I don't think we got the budget out till, I don't know, May, June, 6-7 months into the first term. So this will really help a lot. And if the committee keeps going and the staff keeps going, I think it'll be a really, really great way to continue the process and really do some good work. Thank you very much.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I appreciate the thanks from my colleagues, but certainly it was a very collaborative effort. I mean, all of the directors participated, Mr. Elliott's staff, Mr. Nadarozny. I think that, it was a very fruitful discussions at times, and certainly appreciated the input and engagement of all staff as well as council. and our one citizen member who attended on a regular basis, Terry Jones. But the committee asked that this be put on council's agenda, one, to show the work that had been done by the committee, but also to reinforce the idea that this committee provides a valuable service to council, and it is the hope that going forward that the next term of council will look at this report and what came out of the committee and recommend that it continues on. I know in the first term that I was on, I had put forward this motion and it was defeated, and we didn't have a financial advisory committee. But fortunately, this council saw the benefit of it, and it constituted this term. And so I truly hope that going forward, that this will be an ongoing committee for council, because I think there's a tremendous amount of value for council to be engaged with staff on an ongoing basis through this. I think it makes everything easier. And I think there's some learnings out of this that can be applied in other situations as well, where collectively we're working on issues before being brought to council as a whole.
Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. I echo my positive comments as well, and thank everybody who sat on the committee. And a lot of good work was done. A lot of really detailed investigative work was done, and I think we will be better for it. I would just like to ask, my concern is that there's not enough money being put into the stormwater budget to ensure existing infrastructure maintenance and new infrastructure. So do you have any kind of anything to say about that?
Turn it over to Mr. Elliott.
Mr. Elliott, did we make some progress through this investigation?
Mr. Elliott?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is actually not directly related to this committee, but as part of the work of the engineering group, they have commissioned a report from a consultant with respect to the stormwater maintenance requirements for all of that infrastructure. And then part two, and you'll be seeing a report from them either late, I believe it's actually for the next term of council, and it'll be talked about at orientation, a new way of structuring the billing for stormwater, so that it distributes the stormwater burden more equitably and in a leading way that it's a number of municipalities have recently adopted, and that seems to be the trend of best practice going that way. And so we'll have a lot of discussion with the new council in that regard. So there's a report on the needs, the financial needs of the infrastructure repair and replacement, so we're not ignoring that. That's being built into the 10-year capital plan. Okay. And then the distribution of the revenue and the rates and the charge to the residents and the businesses will be thoroughly discussed with council, and it will probably be a 2-year implementation for that. So you'll see that in the new term.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to hear.
Councillor Thompson would like to comment as well.
I just want to add that, as part of the departmental review, one of the things the committee was asking of staff was, what are some of the pitfalls, what are some of the challenges, what are some of the areas that need to be addressed, and Mr. Downey, he came for us with a number of different departments. At one time, it was Parks and Rec, and then it went on to operations, and so Mr. Downey is quite aware of some of the challenges when it comes to stormwater, and addressed some of those things in the last round of conversations we had, and I know that he's turning over every rock and looking at every opportunity, and I'm quite impressed about the work that he's done in the last little while when it comes to the operations, and I think that this next budget round there'll be some really great information put forward by Mr. Nadarozny, Mr. Downey, and the rest of the directors.
Does anyone else like to comment before we go around a second time? All right, Councillor Maracas, you have the floor.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess if I could ask Councillor Thompson just a question. Was there any discussions, considering that you guys aren't moving forward, about similar to what we did at Environmental Advisory Committee, look at kind of some suggestions for the terms of reference moving forward if the committee does continue? Was there thoughts on possibly adding citizen members to the committee? Were some of those part of the discussions before ending the committee for this term?
Councillor Thompson.
If I may. Yes, certainly. I know that there was some discussion about expanding the group a little bit and including some citizen members who have, a strong financial background next term, but that'll be up to the future council to decide, what the makeup of the committee is, but certainly we did talk about what the opportunities are going forward.
Thank you. Anyone else like to thank the committee before we vote? All right, we'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? All right, well, away we go. Are we on R9? Okay, R7. Oh, yes, this is interesting. Yes, could I have a motion to extend? Councillor Gardner, Councillor Thompson, all in favor? Opposed? The hands are getting very weak, eh? All right, that's better. That's how we were when we started this term. Okay. Pedestrian crossover review, various location. Could I have a mover and a seconder? I'll look to my left. I don't see anything. Councillor Gardner. Councillor Humphreys, we'll get you in on the action here. Okay. Anyone like to speak on this? I'll start things this time. Pedestrian crossing at $144,000. I'm going to ask you, Mr. CAO, or is it Mr. Ramuno? Mr. Ramuno. So is this just like a crossing area so pedestrians can cross? When you said crossover, I imagined a bridge. It's no bridge. Okay, that's all. That's a lot of money for a crossover, isn't it? $144,000? Mr. Ramuno?
To you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I mean, that's the high end, but it does include pavement marking, signage, and the flashing pedestrian signals.
Okay.
On each side of the road.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. I was really surprised to see that the only places that came up were Henderson, 2 places on Henderson. I don't know if anybody else was surprised. So Michael Batt is under you, Mr. Muno? Thank you. There's something in this report that says there can't be any parking on Henderson in a specific place.
Mr. Ramuno?
I would just like to say that Henderson is one of my main streets. I don't believe I've ever seen a car parked on Henderson. The cars travel too fast to be really parking safely there.
You provide some clarification for us,
Sorry,
Mr. Ramuno?
Mr. Chair. Yeah, there's no parking on Henderson. We refer to the report that there'd be no stopping at any time in proximity to the new signal because we don't want to obstruct the views. Yeah, so it's no stopping.
Councillor?
Thank you. So our concerns with the other streets weren't warranted at this point in time. Thank you.
That's true, Mr. Chair, but we'll continue to monitor those moving forward.
Thank you. And as far as you know, are we getting any new complaints on these streets, for these streets?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Chair, based on some of the comments and complaints we received from residents and staff's analysis, we focused in on these 9 locations, but only this one met all the criteria. But again, we'll continue to monitor those moving forward.
Thank you.
Councillor Maracas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, Councillor Gardner, I'm also kind of surprised that some of these didn't make the grade or the cut, so to say. The ones on Stone Road, I hear from many residents in that area that's a concern. So, Mr. Ramuno, if you can keep your eye on that one and maybe take a harder, longer look at those ones. And even the one right here, right outside the town hall. I mean, there's no sidewalk on the opposite side, and all the kids are basically just crossing the street and taking their lives. I mean, cars are flying down this street, and we hear it all the time. So, I mean, it would be great if we could look at putting a crosswalk over here. But once again, I'll leave it in your hands. If you can just take a look at those ones a little bit more carefully and maybe possibly bring some more information back to us.
Councillor Gardner, is this the second time?
It's just a quick question. I'm assuming we don't take these counts in the summer, because so many people go away in the summer. Can you comment on that?
Mr. Ramuno.
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, I don't believe the counts were done the month of June to July. They were done previously, but I'll just have to confirm when they actually went out. But they've been looking at this since the beginning of the year. Yep.
Okay, thank you very much.
Seeing no further comments, questions, we'll call a vote. All those in favor? Okay, I'm going to say that. Opposed? That carries. Now we're moving along. We'll pass R8. We're going to item R9. We did 10. Application for site plan approval for Don Hillock. Time Development Group, 122-room hotel. Well, this is something great. Who would like to put this forward? Councillor Tom, Councillor Humphreys? Comments, questions? Oh, come on. Let's have some comments. All right. This is a great thing. I'm going to call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? You're opposed, Mr. Maroon? No. You just moved your hand. Okay. That carried. Item 10 we did. Item 11 we did. We're into new business, folks. Council, committee. I'll start to my left. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I keep hearing from individuals that people are hearing that people are dropping out of the mayoral race. So I'm looking at the clerk. How many people do we currently have running in that election?
Through you, Mr. Chair, as of this afternoon, 4 for mayor and I believe 10 for council.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Tom? Councillor Humphreys?
Hi there. Through Mr. Chair, I just have a comment and a question. Just a comment. Just wanted to say, and I didn't have a chance, and they're gone, but I really appreciate the strategic plan document from the Aurora Cultural Center. Some great work done. I'm really thrilled with it, and I didn't have a chance to speak earlier to it. I have to apologize. I was here later too, so. Just great work, and I'll talk to Suzanne after. But just a question. I know I bring this up, probably brought it up for 4 years now, maybe longer. But I'm really concerned about that house at Kennedy and Yonge. It's really falling apart now, and I just see it already. Oh, got to demolish and condos in the place. I'm really worried about it now, and I know that I put a bylaw forth on property standards to make it a little bit stronger for heritage homes or heritage properties, and like what can we do? And then the second thing is they did apply for a community improvement grant. Are we anywhere there with that? And what can we do? Because I go by there, I'm worried about that. That's one of many, but that one, it really bothers me. It's a beautiful property, and I feel like that's a game that's being played. And I don't know if my perception's wrong, but anyway, can someone help me answer that question? Maybe Mr.
I'm looking at Mr. Ramuno, who's going to hopefully help us there.
Yes, certainly. Through you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Humphreys, you're correct. Council did approve the community improvement plan grant a while ago. We have reached out to them. They haven't proceeded with anything. We obviously haven't issued the funds to them, but I will follow up with staff again to contact the owners, see what they're going to do, because you're right, there's been no activity there.
Right.
So.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you through Mr. Chair. Thank you so much, Mr. Runo. I appreciate it. I know you will, and I think now it's been long enough that we could say what's going on. And I don't mind about the community improvement grant. I mean, if they're going to do something, I'd be thrilled. My concern is the property standards. It's really looking bad, and I think cut the grass when they have to. And then just the building itself is starting to, you're starting to see things wavering, and I just already see it playing out. So it's one of those ones I keep my eye on, because I think I have nightmares over the Browning house and the decision we made there, which was the right one at the time, but now nothing's, the plans for that hasn't fruition, so this one just is worrying me. That's all. Thank you.
I'm going to Mayor Dahl.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just quickly for Mr. Downey. So I was down on Brooklyn Avenue today, and it's been paved. Looks like a real street again. It's amazing. So two things. One, if maybe the street sweeper could go by there. There's lots of gravel and stuff over by the curve where it comes down. If someone could look into that. The other thing is there's an unofficial trail just by people walking up by the creek on the east side of the creek. And apparently there was some discussion as to whether or not that was going to become part of the official trail network at some point. I think that was raised perhaps in the original public information sessions. So if someone could look into that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson. Councillor Gardner.
I was expecting the sewer use bylaw for pool and hot tub drainage to be on this agenda. I think I was told that it was going to be on this agenda, so does anybody know when it's coming?
Mr. CAO, do we often put our bylaws on council agendas?
No, it was a report from staff. It was to be a report from staff on including hot tubs and pool drainage on our sewer use bylaw.
I'll ask Mr. Ramuno.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that's on our list. I'll have to send an email to council to see when we're planning to bring that one back. But you're right, that's.
So could it be for September, as we have no other meeting? Yes, thank you. Actually, Mr. Muno, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Muno. Oh, hold on a second.
I'm sorry, Councillor.
He's writing. I need to ask him something.
Mr. Ramuno.
There is a traffic counter at the moment on Royal Road. So could you please speak to Mr. Batt? It's not a good time to put a traffic counter on a local road. Thank you. I'm going to ask council to bear with me on this because I can't figure out how else I can get it on the agenda. Mr. Clerk and I have had some conversations. This was on our Heritage Advisory Committee, and we were told that the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority will be removing they call them two barriers on the East Holland River, but my understanding is that they're culverts, and they're to increase habitat and spawning of several species of fish. So it's going to be a really different look. Right now it's very rustic. It's going to become modern. It's in the Stone Road area, and it's on the back of Deer Glen Terrace. So I was just thinking, because we seem to have issues with culverts, that it might be a good idea to communicate with the residents in that area and tell them that there's going to be work done in September, and the reason for it is it's going to benefit the fish. And there's also, these are heritage bridges maybe. So what Lake Simcoe is going to do, they're actually going to do a heritage display along the trail in that area, because I'm sure we'll hear from some residents who are upset about the heritage part coming down, because it's part of the Lloyd family and the Lloyd family sawmill. So I'm wondering if maybe to you, Mr. CAO, like, how could we send out a message about this so that at least the people in the area will know about it, and we won't get calls to say, what are we doing, and the whole craziness?
Mr. CAO?
To you, Mr. Chair, we'll look into working with the Conservation Authority to get out some kind of communication to the areas, the residents.
Okay, thank you. And it does come from the Heritage Advisory Committee. I'll just give you the reference. Thank you.
Councillor?
I'm done.
Okay, very good. Councillor Marcus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to, this might be a Mr. Downey question. Mr. Downey, if it's wrong, please tell me, but Central York Fire Service, I've had some residents that live on Dunning and are just curious to why they use that as an exit out to Yonge Street from the Edward Street Fire Hall. They're just wondering why they wouldn't just go out the other way and get to Yonge Street. Instead, it seems that they sometimes come down Dunning, and so they're just wondering if we can inquire why they do that, and maybe if they could look at an alternative route. And it's not necessarily when they're leaving to go out for a fire, it's just sometimes they're just using it as a pathway. So if we can just look into that, I'd appreciate that. Thank you. And then through you, Mr. Chair, to our clerk, I just got a procedural question. So when our procedural bylaw is silent on a matter, do we not revert back to Robert's Rules of Order?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I generally make it the chair's call in those situations. We could certainly go back to Robert's Rules of Order, but we'd probably have to call a recess and search through that rather thick book and to make sure we're getting it right. So I generally leave it up to the chair on those silent matters.
I disagree with that because from what I remember and what I recall with our last clerk, that we revert back when our procedural bylaw is silent, we revert back to Robert's Rules of Order, but maybe we can sit down and have that discussion and we can just make sure that everyone around the table understands that.
If that's all, Councillor Gardner, did you want to?
Chair, we received the annual report. I'm not sure, was this under your purview, Ms. Mackenzie Smith? Draft, is it draft?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it is the draft for Council's review. It is Council's report to the community.
Thank you. So is Council supposed to review this and say if we... Thank you.
Mr. CAO, I was talking to Mr. Ramuno, and we've got an RFP going out for the armory for the construction on the design that we put forward. And I had asked Mr. Ramuno if that was going to come back to council as we normally have done, but he's indicated to me through Mr. Elliott that that bylaw has changed. So can you tell me when that changed? It seems to me it must have been very recent.
Yes, to you, Mr. Chair. I looked to Mr. Elliott for the date, but the last change of the procurement bylaw, June? May or June, yeah, very recent.
Was recent. So in effect, we will not see anything coming forward who got the winning bid and how much it was or anything like that. That will not be brought forward to the public or for council.
To you, Mr. Chair, that's right. If the item is within budget and there's no extraordinary issues with the procurement process, in other words, there was nothing unusual about the procurement process, it followed and all, the bidder met all the qualifications and so on, then we would just proceed. If it is over budget or if there is some judgment we're using with respect to the procurement process, then we would bring that to council.
And has the Niagara College brought forward their program development plan yet?
Through you, Mr. Chair, not in detailed form. We did have a meeting with them about a month ago now, and they are working on those elements, and they were meeting with us to make sure that we were tying in our own needs as a corporation, as well as getting a handle on the other community uses that will be involved for the building. So we've had that first meeting, but they have not finalized their specific offering yet.
Thank you. Do I call adjournment now? Could I have a motion for adjournment? Councillor Tom, Mayor Daw, all those in favor, we are now adjourned. Thank you.